I guess the intro isn't happening. That was weird. Okay. But yeah, I guess we're just gonna be dealing with internet issues, but that's what it is. Welcome, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Today is a day where I get to slap around the sacred cow of sacred cows, King Kong 2005. After rewatching it again, both the theatrical copy and the extended cut, my conclusion, although it's kind of been brewing for a little while anyway, is that it's not as good as I remember it being. I think that in a lot of cases it drags, it does too little despite its length, and ultimately the intentions of the filmmakers do not do anything in terms of giving the film any favors. And in fact, some of the things that they leave up to the interpretation of the viewer end up hurting it and hurting King Kong discourse overall. So, yeah. Your related news was Jack Black a bad casting for King Kong? I think that for the character that they're trying to portray in Jack Black's acting performance, he does exactly what they wanted him to do. However, it is the writing where ultimately his character falls apart. Also, I hated Kong for a long time because he killed a T-Rex. 3 more being KO'd was an even bigger insult to injury. I mean, yeah, I was always a dinosaur kid, so seeing any of the King Kong movies and watching it beat a dinosaur, when I was younger, I was like, no. But nowadays, I'm like, okay, it is what it is. But the problem I have with Kong's fight with the V-Rexes has to do with the number as well, but we'll get into that as we go along. But, this is, of course, a debate. So what this does mean is that I will not be alone. I will be bringing a bunch of people on for this. So since I know everyone loves this movie too, it means that, like, yeah, I'm going to get a bunch of people with their thoughts. So that's the link for the Discord, guys. I just brought that into the chat for the Discord people. So let's do that right there. I've alerted everyone in the Discord that is up. So anyone who wants to take a crack at me is there and free to join. So, yeah. Well, this should be an interesting take. Oh, it is going to be an interesting take. It's on now. Well, I mean, hey, you're gonna have to do your thing. See if the Sea King or one of the Sea Kings is able to actually pull out some good debater skills against me, because we've never hardline debated on anything before. So this is gonna be fun. And while I wait for people to pour in, if you guys have got questions about the film for me that are gonna be more simple to answer, you are more than welcome to put those there for me. And I'm just gonna sort of, get everything nice in place while I wait for more people to join. So, but besides, of course, the fact that this is what I'm dealing with, how's everyone doing? I put some music in the background too. If you can hear the Gigabash stuff, let me know. I can hear it, but I don't think I shared my audio for Gigabash with you guys. I think this version of Kong would be much more interesting. I think this version of Kong would be a much more interesting world to make a multi-focus series to be key in the multiverse. I mean, in my taste. I think generally Skull Island in the 05 version wants to be like the classic style of just like it wants to mimic the original Skull Island, but because it's a modern film with modern conceptions of paleontology as a backdrop to it, it naturally is going to take on like certain theories and just certain general isms that are common throughout like paleontology or even paleo fantasy from that era. That just goes without saying. Surprisingly got a good kaiju haul in Vegas. Yeah, no, I saw. Oh, look, it's the Minecraft world. Again, another person who had very adamant thoughts when it came to me daring to say that King Kong 05 is actually just not as good as people think it is. And I just share that to myself. Oh, wow. Look, I think what I'll do as usual is I'll give it the basic 10 minutes and then I will go into my thoughts regardless of whether or not people join at the moment. I'm not going to be able to join today since I have some stuff going on tonight with family, but I'll listen for a while. Okay. But I think what I actually will do in this case is I think I will invite people who are in chat if they want to give their thoughts. I'll let them sort of impact the stream as well. So the invite goes across everywhere. So if you are by the chat and you want to give your thoughts or at least debate the topic, more than welcome to. So let me stop the music there for a little bit. But what I do have at the moment, at least, is 12 pages of notes that do sort of explain my general thoughts to where it concerns why I think that the film just isn't good. So there we go. And we do got someone already in there. Alex got weed. How's it going, man?
Good.
Awesome. So are you pro King Kong 2005 or have some of your own criticisms to lobby against the film?
I'm kind of in between. Like, I do think like the movie's good,
Okay.
but I think a lot of people like genuinely like don't like the film just because of the one scene where it's like the sauropod scene where it's like the bad CGI. I think that's like the one people don't like the movie.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, if we're going to begin at the sauropod scene, I wanted to probably start from the beginning, but we could start there. So, outside of generally not having the best CGI, the only character beat that happens in the sauropod stampede is Herb's death. But given the logistics of that scene, his death should not have happened at all, given where all the characters end up. Because, and what we'll probably do is, I will share my screen, and what we'll do is, what we're going to have to do generally, unfortunately, is the fact that because it's a film, it's a universal film, we'll have a lot of issues just running any scenes on their own, so we'll have to stop on all the points. But we'll make it work.
Yes.
So let's go there. Human sacrifice. See if I can find the stamp. Oh, there's a stampede. Okay, cool. So, present scene, window, Kong 05. All right, that looks good on my end.
Yeah.
Okay, hide that. So, we obviously have the Brontosaurus stampede, and that's obviously taken from the original film in the sense where you have a brontosaurus, but it's also in the swamp, and that ends up in the '05 film being split between two different scenes: the stampede, which includes the brontosaurus proper, and then the swamp, which was cut for the movie, which they actually did not want cut for the movie to begin with. That features the pteranodon, and it's kind of cool. Like you have like this really action film moment of seeing all these dinosaurs stampeding through, and all their characters trying to like run around and escape and stuff like that. A few of them get crushed, but besides obviously having the human characters here and running from the dinosaurs, you also have the inclusion of the raptors. The problem is that it becomes a moment where there's just too much going on, where you have not only not just one brontosaurus, you have a whole herd of brontosaurus. You don't have one brontosaurus chasing after and trying to kill the crew. You have them just stampeding through. You also have raptors on top of that. Then you also have them fall over each other into this giant ravine, and then you have our crew members climbing up away from the raptors, and it just becomes this really cool action set piece concluded with this giant action set piece with more action set pieces added, and then it overall just becomes a little desensitized to a certain bit. The other problem too is that besides Herb, who's the only person who dies from this scene here, the raptors generally just aren't that threatening, because you have one of them attack right here. You have the one that attacks Brontosaurus. Nothing happens. Haynes ends up kicking one, and that one, nothing really happens to it. You have one moment where, right here, where you have the raptors about to kill Carl, but since obviously, Carl is going to survive till the end of the movie, it's a fake out death, and you have the raptor die. And then right here, you realize that one, you have some no-name sailors, so a few of them are going to end up falling off. But Jim right here, clearly he's the closest one to the edge, so he's going to have his little action set piece where he gets away, because we're still trying to build up his character. And so, we have the one sailor who dies.
Yeah, it's kind of like Jurassic. It's like the Jurassic movies in a way, where like anyone who's like just not named, like just gets killed off.
Mm-hmm. And then the other problem too, which is going to come up here, is let's go all the way to the end. So we have Carl and Jack here. We have the Venanosaurus try to kill Carl here. Ends up getting killed by only like a couple bullets.
Yeah.
Same thing, killed only by a couple bullets here. And then you have them all climbing up here. And now you only have 2 raptors. Even then there's a third. So you've got 3 raptors trying to chase down everyone. It's right here where you have Herb deciding to essentially give Carl a tripod and be left behind.
Okay.
And at least in the audio commentary, it's specifically said that even though Carl becomes a more malicious character later on in the film, they specifically wanted this to be one of the lower moments for him, where you actually see him try to rescue someone and feel pretty bad about this person's death. And the problem here is that you have all of these guys climbing up here. We already know Jack saved Carl, so Jack should be one of these guys right about this area here. For some reason, Carl, even though there's other guys looking down, Carl does not say anything to him. He does not say anything to this guy. He does not say anything to Jack, where we have no clue where Jack is in this scene, to just shoot the 3 raptors who are trying to chase them. And the reason why this scene doesn't work and the raptors aren't effective as antagonists here is that we've already seen, let's go back.
Honestly, I think like what makes like the raptors like less threatening is just like it's the eyes for me. Like they look way too like buggy.
Well, their designs are a whole nother thing. But with the raptors, like we already know Hayes kicked one around. This one's already dead, so that's 1 dead raptor. Jack inadvertently kills another raptor, so that makes 2. And then let's see. Right here makes 3 raptors dead. And I don't want to get copyright struck, so that's why it's like this.
Yeah.
And this next raptor right here, that makes 4 dead raptors. So at this point, you have 3 raptors chasing them, and they've already killed more than the number of raptors that are chasing them. So given the fact that, 1, they're shooting Tommy guns, which generally, if you're talking about a standard Tommy gun of that era, which is shooting about .45, a drum mag's going to have around 50 to 100 rounds. It takes about 5-6 rounds to kill them. Let's even round it up and say 10 rounds to kill them. It's only going to take a tenth of the ammo to kill one raptor. There's 3. One guy on their own with a Tommy gun is going to be able to kill these raptors just fine. But for some reason, Herb is not able to be saved by any of these guys here at all. And Carl, who's apparently supposed to be in the scene, actually genuinely trying to save his friend, does not tell any of these guys to shoot at the dinosaurs that we already know are capable of being killed. So it does not make the scene.
He could have just said like, he could have like just said like, "Oh, shoot him! Shoot him! Shoot him!"
And again, we already know Carl and Jack. Jack saved Carl, so we already know Jack should be somewhere close to Carl. Carl doesn't tell Jack, "Hey, Jack, shoot at the dinosaurs. You already killed one with your machine gun. Please just keep doing it."
Yeah.
Arbor of dinosaurs. I also like to delete Triceratops scene since it gave Herb and Carl more team time. Kind of wish they have kept in the bizarre version of the long neck that attacks people. Yeah, like the problem is that throughout the audio commentary for the extended cut of this movie, Jackson lamented how little time they actually had to include character writing in this movie. But you have the swamp scene and you have the stampede scene, which are 2 different scenes. One of them including the same dinosaur, but you decide to split those into 2 separate scenes, which take up a significant amount of time in this movie, which could have been actually used for character writing if character writing was a big concern. That's one big problem I could say I have in this scene here with the stampede. So
yeah,
there's that. Any other, at least in your eyes, any other praises you want to give to the film that
I think
might want to contest?
I think just King Kong in general, like he's very human, like compared to like, don't get me wrong, Monster vs Kong, he is also like very human as well, but like compared to 2005 Kong and Monster vs Kong, I just feel more empathetic with 2005 Kong.
I think the other problem too is that with Kong in the Monsterverse, it makes more sense for Kong the Monsterverse to be more humanized because of the writing for that story. It's not trying to be the 33 film, so they can get away with a little bit more humanization. Whereas in this film, you're trying to emulate the 33 film, but you add all these extra scenes. Let me see if I can find the scene with Anne and Kong together. And Insane 4. Yeah.
Is it like the ice skating?
No, not the ice skating scene. This scene right here.
Oh yeah, no. I love this scene.
So, at least in this scene, again, going based on like authorial intent of this scene, what they wanted to do was establish a shifting dynamic of power between Anne and Kong, where essentially, due to Kong's bit of vulnerability and unable to kill Anne later on in this scene, she ends up developing a kind of power over him in the sense, and it's sort of mimicking the Arabian proverb. But the problem is that we also know that in this scene and the scene prior, when he brings Anne to the boneyard with the other natives who had already died, for Kong, we are told, again, the intent was that Anne was not special to Kong in any way in the 05 version, and Kong was going to kill her regardless, but for some reason, Anne stabbing Kong with the bone necklace and escaping for a little bit ruined Kong's ramping himself up to kill her, and somehow allows her to live longer instead of Kong being angry that he was just hurt by the thing he's going to kill anyway and just kills her to begin with. So you have to make a lot of inferences and leaps in logic to get Anne to still survive to this point to begin with, which is a problem. And then the other thing too is that because the film sets up Anne and Kong's relationship to be far less antagonistic. I mean, Drake says it in the chat. The 33 film, Anne hated Kong, but in the remake they were friends. Yeah, so like in the 05 version, Kong by the end of the movie sees Anne more as like his family. And the problem with that is that, again, like I said, Kong was going to kill Anne anyway, and hurting Kong and escaping for a little bit somehow made Kong not want to kill her more. And we still get to this scene here where Kong is essentially just kind of like, they describe him as like kind of just being macho and stuff and trying to like puff out his chest, show that he's threatening. And the only reason why we really like this scene has like any connection to the rest of the film is because of the whole thing of like her being an actress and stuff and entertaining him for a little bit. But we can go all the way here because
I think like another thing in this scene is like Kong's like trying to knock her over like the cliff, and he's like just laughing.
Well, he's laughing for a little bit, but then it's once he starts to knock her over is when she decides like enough is enough, and that's when he gets all angry.
Yeah.
And again, for some reason, Kong was already going to kill her to begin with, but then lets her live here, is entertained, but then when she pushes back, he for some reason doesn't try to kill her anyway, even though that was already like the thought in his mind to begin with.
Yeah, like
Kong, it doesn't Kong,
work. You're like a 20 foot tall gorilla, just like smash her. Not like that though.
Well, that's like essentially that's like in this scene here.
Yeah, he was going
to him. He has him like essentially throwing like a temper tantrum, and he's like revving himself up to kill Kong. But the problem is that because he's like flailing around in the scene and not actually doing anything to hurt her, it doesn't come across as Kong like being like a dangerous monster, because one, we know Anne's not going to really die because they do so much to show Kong being angry and not getting anywhere near Anne to begin with, but also because of the fact that we know it's Anne Darrow, she's not going to die here at all either.
Yeah.
And then Kong gets knocked over. Like, it makes him look far more like a child throwing a temper tantrum than a monster or even like an animal.
Yeah, so like also because like when like Anne Darrow, like she says no, and like that's when like Kong just like completely like switches.
Mm-hmm. Well, like she pushes him away and like hits him.
Yeah.
And it's just weird because like again, Jackson tells us in the commentary that yes, he was going to kill Anne. Has the perfect opportunity to. They have not done a good enough job to suggest Kong just wouldn't kill her to begin with, given the provocation she's made towards him, that the scenes just don't add up and they don't make sense.
Yeah. Also, because like there's like hundreds of different, like there's probably like a few different ways like Kong could just like just kill Anne like right there, like he could just crush her, just throw her off, just eat her.
Well, the other thing too is that prior to this scene, they had it where Kong's chewing on the bamboo. Originally, apparently, the animatic Kong was eating a dinosaur, but Andy Serkis wanted Kong to specifically be herbivorous, which I think just adds more to like the perception that the film has, where Kong is very much innocence and just sort of an animal rather than a monster. And the problem with that is that too often Kong is viewed as just an innocent animal, and the film shies away from the 33 film actually painting him as a monster. And that's why I think like a lot of commentary about these films falls apart, is that people are like either just they haven't seen the 33 film in a while, or they're mixing together the Dino De Laurentiis version, the 33 film, and this one, where in the Dino film and in this one, all of these like they continually humanized Kong more and more and made him more the victim as the films, like as the later films went on, versus the 33
I
film.
mean, with the 1933 King Kong, like portraying King Kong as a monster, like that's kind of forgivable because it's the 1930s. That's when dinosaurs are still thought to be just big monsters.
Yeah, I guess, but like still, like King Kong just isn't just a normal animal. He still is like a giant monster still. Like it's still within that tradition. And if you really just wanted to have a film about like a big gorilla, there's literally Mighty Joy Young that O'Brien and Harryhausen worked on, which is far closer.
A lot of people like in like a lot of like comparison videos or like evolution videos I see, like they always put like Mighty Joe Young in like King Kong videos. It's like, is Mighty Joe like is like Mighty Joe Young a Kong?
No. The only reason why Joe is related to Kong at all is because Harryhausen and O'Brien worked on that film together. And it was just
Okay.
another film that O'Brien worked on that had an ape in it. So
Yeah.
but like again, we see one not only like the sailors but also the natives fighting against Kong, and that's like another problem I think I have with the 05 version is its problem with the natives.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, fair. That was also like 1930s.
no,
19...
well, no, I have no problem with the natives of the 30s. I have a problem with the natives of the 05 version because given all the world building that is specifically said about them in the 05 universe, they make total sense for what they are, for what their role is and why they act the way they are. The problem is that because Jackson felt like the 33 film, you didn't have to explain as much. They muddy the actions of what like the intentions of the natives are, and because the natives are far more hostile in his version, it gives people the impression that he's otherizing them, where he like even when they do the imitation of the 33 film in New York, he mentions in the commentary how those versions of the natives that are closer to the 33 versions are very much stereotypes, whereas he wanted to go more realistic with the natives of his film. And
I mean, yeah, that could, like,
29 says this. Peter Jackson made them too violent like orcs. No, the problem is that they don't properly explain why they acted the way they do, because in the film, since there's really no dialogue between the natives and the crew, the older like native woman who's talking to Anne while Anne's being held down is essentially blaming Anne for bringing about Kong, because when she screams because of the natives, it alerts Kong. And essentially what they wanted to have in this scene was that due to Anne screaming and then Kong responding, the natives who are afraid of Kong and worship him as a god see Anne and the crew having disturbed their peace, and because of that they need to sacrifice someone. But because the crew who are outsiders disturb the peace, they want to sacrifice Anne or at least someone else to Kong to satiate Kong. And logically that makes sense. That justify it doesn't justify them killing Mike or killing the nameless crew member, but at least their train of logic makes sense given how they act and the world building around them. Whereas in the 05 version, it's explained in external material that the natives live on the outskirts on this area because the island is too inhospitable, and because of how inhospitable it is and how little island that they have not really devolved would be a right word, but they've essentially having to eke out a terrible existence, which has caused them to act the way they are, and they're acting completely out of fear. And like that all works, but because we don't get any dialogue from them, so we don't understand really their culture too much at all. And again, cool that they have like a language that was actually thought up, because the person who designed the language for the natives also worked on like the translations for and like did the work for the Elvish and the Dwarven in the Lord of the Rings film, which is nice. But because unlike in the 33 film where there's at least some translation and the natives are far less hostile, it makes them appear more like just orcs. And again, because Jackson worked on the Lord of the Rings films, and the orcs just generally have a similar skin tone to the natives, not like by any like correlation being like that's what they wanted to do. I think probably just by coincidence, their violence just makes them be equated to orcs in people's minds. And I think because people don't do any research and they just want to be like, oh, it was racist in the 30s, so Jackson was bringing it back because he loved it, and it's still racist now, is a disservice to that scene.
With the tribes in King Kong 2005, in the behind the scenes for the movie, they say that the tribe on the island on Skull Island weren't like the original like owners, like the original tribe of the island. I think like they said like,
well, they weren't like, there was another civilization that was on Skull Island back when Skull Island had
the
more stuff.
or like the Inca or like the Aztecs, I'm pretty sure.
Well, they what's it called? I'm gonna just go through my notes again because there's several different cultures that they compare them to. At least the older civilizations. So let's see. So they compared them to they said that a lot of the influences for the architecture was Cambodia, Mayans, Egypt, and Troy. So
Yeah.
and the only quote unquote white civilization that we could say is being used as an influence for the more advanced civilization would be Troy. But
Yeah, I see
again,
where you're
it's
coming from.
again, I only think the implication was that there was this old white civilization that was there before the natives who came in later, which I forget who it was who said that specifically. I'd have to go through all the bad Kong videos I've found over the years, but the whole point of the natives of the '05 version is that they maintain the wall to a certain degree, which is still admirable, but because of their situation, they can only eke out a certain living. They are extremely superstitious. Given the fact that what they deal with, it makes complete sense they would act this way. And not to mention the fact of they also use a line from Heart of Darkness in the movie, which is the book that Jimmy's reading. But in particular, the line that Hayes brings up from Heart of Darkness that Jimmy's because Jimmy's asking about the book, is he says the original text is the earth seemed unearthly. We are accustomed to look upon the shackled form of a conquered monster, but there they could look at a thing monstrous and free. It was unearthly, and the men were no, they were not inhuman. Well, that was the worst of it. The suspicion of their not being inhuman. It would come slowly to one. They howled and leaped and spun and made horrid faces. But what thrilled you was just the thought of their humanity like yours, the thought of your remote kinship with this wild and passionate uproar. And I haven't read Heart of Darkness in a long time, but that is actually more of that text than what Hayes directly states. And I think that for anyone who's read Heart of Darkness and knows the whole line, it paints what the natives are, because it comes right before the native scene. It paints them in a different light because it shows that we're still connected to these people, they're still humans, but given the conditions of Skull Island, they are forced into acting these ways because of their environment. It has nothing to do with them
I
as a
think
people or a
they also
commentary
said
on other people.
they also said the wall, like the massive ass wall in Skull Island, that used to protect them from Kong and the V-Rex and stuff like that. But then due to the earthquakes that were happening, the wall kind of broke. And
Well, no, the wall is still maintained. That's not the problem. But it's just that generally there was just less and less of the island that was protected by the wall. One sec. If the 3-hour film was spliced a bit to be a tad shorter, could it generally be great? No, I don't even think so. I think even if you tightened up the film, there's still so little character in a lot of places to where tightening up the film even more would make it even more unwatchable, in my eyes.
Yeah.
Generally, though, Kong really does need the MonsterVerse. MonsterVerse Kong broke free from the reptilian trope, or repetitive trope for his movies, and gave him both character and genuine strength. No, I think he has genuine strength in in his original film, and I think that because they kept wanting to do different things, or at least have their own spin on the original story, that it becomes a strange sort of not amalgamation. And I wouldn't even say it's a deconstruction either. It feels like they keep missing the message over and over again, and the point just kept on getting diluted as more people talked about it.
Yeah. I'll be with you in 1 second. I'll be back in just a few seconds.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I think since we're just going out of order anyway, let's go to is this one? Nope, it doesn't have the V-Rex scene. Okay. So, yep, full fight. Okay. So, the introduction is, again, I would say generally having the V-Rex introduced via killing the Photodon, and then Anne has the encounter with the 2 centipedes. It's long, and I think it's just because Jackson really wanted to add more of the like nasty elements of Skull Island, and I'm like, okay, cool, I guess. I don't think it's really needed, but you do you. And then finally, we end up getting not just one V-Rex, we get another one. And that one goes away. And besides the fact that one, it's really weird that this one V-Rex is able to sneak up on her. Let's go all the way to when the V-Rex actually gets shown off, or Kong gets shown off. So I think I hear myself in his audio, so I'm going to quickly just mute him for a second. Or actually, let me just move. There we go. That's better. So if need be, he'll be able to join back in a little bit. So the problem outside of the fact that you have 3 dinosaurs fighting against Kong is the fact that they don't really do anything to Kong throughout this entire fight. So you get 1 shot there. 2, Kong is able to stop him here. And that's before the first juvenile V-Rex comes in for the fight. So let's skip ahead. Again, I'm skipping ahead primarily just so I don't get claimed for all these clips. But Kong is able to at least get 2 hits in and is able to hold the male V-Rex, the biggest one, at bay before he gets ambushed. And he only gets hit here because of the ambush. And we got 2 Alexes. Oh, there's that one. Okay, that's strange. Oh well. So, and essentially what I did throughout the scene was I would have Kong anytime Kong got hit, I'd reset the counter, and I just want to see how many times Kong got hits on these dinosaurs before they even got 1 hit in. And going back here, both tried to ambush him, or kind of fight him, and then it's the female that ambushes him. And we have 1, 2, 3 makes a mess, 4, 5, 6, and Minecraft World comes in as well. Hello, Minecraft World.
Hi. So, you know what I said in the chat, that there was a slight change in plans, but I'm not really up for debating this one at the moment. Though, I will say to this, I feel like this scene helps with Kong as a character. Yeah, it's a bit weird that he's taking on 3 Rexes at once, but I feel like that, like, on its own, it's weird, but I would say it adds a little bit more to Kong's character in showing, as a Natural History Channel put it, that he's very clearly experienced against these things and adds a bit more to his history.
Sure.
That's something that Jackson was intending to go for.
You can say that, but you could also have Kong be experienced fighting one, still have it be a pitched battle, but show that, like, Kong is able to avoid things and infer that Kong has had experience fighting a dinosaur before without it being so exceptionally one-sided. Because even if we say Kong has experience fighting fighting dinosaurs, the fact that he's able to so effortlessly fight these 3 dinosaurs and gain very few injuries, and any of the injuries that he does sustain don't really do anything to him throughout the rest of the film. He's not shown to be wavering at all later on in this fight. And before he even gets another significant hit in on him, he's able to kill one of them. So there's that. Because in even That's here, fun. You have Kong
Personally,
get knocked down. One sec, you're roboting really badly.
Oh God, no! Not again! Not again! One sec. I'm gonna leave and come back real quick.
Okay. All right, so it's just me. But the point I'm trying to make is that if we actually go back here, even though there's one V-Rex able to chomp down, Kong literally it does very little to him. This one injury does nothing to hamper him throughout the rest of the movie. And essentially uses that as almost a proto neck snap with how much he flings this one back. Several misses, despite the fact that there's another V-Rex under him that does not get a single bite in, and is able to fling this one into the other one, knock this one down. That's a whole different hit. And then kills the juvenile. And Minecraft falls back, but it looks like he's... Nope. There he is. He's back.
Can you hear me better?
A little bit roboting, but
Okay.
I'll let you know if there's any other issues.
Okay. Because my internet, it's not perfect.
That's cool. Oh, there's your backup partner.
Yeah, I was actually when I got home, I was planning to watch Troll at some point, the Netflix one. Because
Yeah.
One sec before anyone says anything else real quick. I do like the lore and world building of 05, but it does try too hard to be bigger, better than original, and the New York final is way too much like some serious rom-com love triangle with a giant ape. Yeah.
Oh.
And like even comparing the original Kong fight, and even what's it called? Jackson does mention that they use some of the choreography from this fight here.
I mean,
The thing that's good about
the jaw break, you're not ending a fight like a Kong versus dinosaur fight without splitting the jaw open at some point. No, they tried that with the skull crawler. So
Yeah. So we'll do it like this. This seems a little bit better. So you have them square off against each other. Mock bite. Kong goes around, tries to take the advantage. It shows that Kong is at least experienced fighting this dinosaur, and the dinosaur again. Kong still has the advantage in this film, but because of the fact there's only one dinosaur, it doesn't come across as Kong being so much more above his opponent that he feels like he's in no danger at all. And even here, even though Kong has the advantage, he's not able to knock down the T-Rex the first time, is knocked down, and is at a disadvantage here, but still uses his arms and his legs here to not get his head bitten off. And finally, he gets back up. Kong's able to bop and weave. He's able to punch. And then even though he tries to strike, the dinosaur is still shown to still be a pretty competent enemy as he's able to dodge out of the way. And again, this also feels more natural too, where it doesn't feel like, oh, these guys are fighting. There's a flow to their fight, but it also feels more natural. As once animals get to a certain point where like there's some distance between the two, they often will just sort of sit there, size each other up again before fighting again. Again, another mock bite. And then finally again, the T-Rex fights again, and then you get back into the fight of it. And actually, once like going right back here, let's go back this way. Oh, Nick's in the chat.
Hey, what's up?
He's stealing. And right here, so then Kong is backed up in the corner. I don't need no widescreen. This should be fine. So right here, as he comes in, he's able to hit. Dinosaur backs up. Block. And again, it just feels more natural. And then finally, Kong is able to get the advantage again, knock the dinosaur over. And it feels like he has the advantage. And then that's where, again, Kong is knocked off. Dinosaur gets the advantage. And again, it's this very nice back and forth between the two. And then we also get the interesting shot here with Anne. So we include her into the fight as well. And again, far more of a back and forth between the two monsters. And Kong is able to, like, very readily get the upper hand several times. And then finally...
Sea Monster, you're echoing. Okay.
One sec. There we go. That resolve it, Sea Monster? Nope, it did not.
What?
I think. Do you have the stream playing on in the background, or
No?
like on a different tab?
Do you have headphones on?
No? Nope.
That's why.
Okay, yeah, that explains a lot. Or echo cancellation. That's what I use. It's fine on my
Okay.
end.
Let's see.
But
I just want to highlight the first comment at the very bottom.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think people the one at the very bottom of that video talking about. Yeah.
One sec.
The
So
one that said I don't think people know how long it took to animate this fight. Stop motion is a really tough art.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of
Right here.
patience.
And Vic's back as well, it looks like. But one sec, I wanted to highlight someone's comment real quick. The original fight is less like they're fighting for Anne and more like two animals fighting for territorial dispute. Well, the T-Rex went in on Anne anyway. That's why he was there to begin with, and then Kong comes back to defend her. So they are fighting over Anne, but it does feel far more natural, which is good. How does Kong not have any broken bones? T-Rex has bite force of 6 tons. Again, because he has visible scars, but like actually, that'd be another perfect thing right there. And see, were you able to? Nope.
No.
In private chat, see, text me when. Let me sound here. See if I can adjust the echo problem. Okay. So, let's go back.
Do you have echo cancellation on? It should be in the audio settings.
Let's go there. So yeah, like he gets hit right here, bites down really hard. We know it's either the male or the female, so it's one of the adult V-Rexes. He holds on for a long time, and Kong's just able to flip over and then catch with a foot. Gets really like no issues at all. And right here, same arm, throws it into the other arm, and then is able to just full on ram this V-Rex down, and then use that same arm they got bitten on to throw it into the log there. So, again, already fought 3 dinosaurs, now just 2. Got bitten on the arm, like a clean bite, versus like the juvenile that ambushed him earlier on, which is, one sec, we'll go back to that bite.
I'm sorry. I'm looking in the corner of the video. I got distracted a bit. Troll 2. Why?
I don't know. But yeah, right there, we could say one, it's a juvenile, so the bite's not going to be as severe. Kong is still like, he visibly has like a thing of pain, but it's not as bad of a bite. And then immediately just gets back up and shoves them both off.
I mean, it's for one, there's the fact that Kong, as a species, the species of Megapromatus Kong, have been living amongst V-Rexes and facing V-Rexes for however 1,000 years they've been on. So it's highly possible that Kong has adapted to a similar situation like a V-Rex jaw. Like a V-Rex
That may
bite.
be true, but then the other problem too is that Jackson also states that there were more Kongs, which is what we see later on with the layer scene. And they specifically state that the dinosaurs were able to narrow down their numbers. So we can say that, yes, Kong would be more proficient than the average Megapromatus Kong at taking on a V-Rex. The problem with that is that taking on a whole family of them with, even though we see him in pain, there is no slowing to his ability after this, either with the Pteropus mordaxes or later on in New York. So it doesn't come across as he was affected at all by them. And it just makes the V-Rexes come across as less threatening than the one dinosaur we see in the 33 film. On one sec, someone says, Zim is lucky Black Rooney's here to debate. Nah, I'd debate Black on. I know he really likes this film. And there's very little I've argued with Black on, so I would have found it to be interesting.
So if he was here, that would have been a very interesting discussion.
Exactly. I know CGF might come in. I'm not sure if he will, though, unfortunately, but we'll see.
I don't know how he feels about Kong 05.
I know he said put me in, coach, and I think that was reference to arguing that it was a good film. But the Almighty Oreo King says, how did you come up with the name Zimzilla? Was inspired by Invader Zim by any chance? Yeah, I'm a big Invader Zim fan.
Oh, nice. I need to rewatch that show.
It's a good show.
Yeah,
because I had more trouble with the 2 Mitos and Kong with the 3 V-Rexes. Yeah, He literally did have more trouble with the Mutos than Kong did with the V-Rexes. And again, in both cases, you're dealing with two species that have had several clashes with one another, and even though Godzilla's
the Mutos straight up being the predators of the Titanoscogera species.
Well, they're not predators, they're parasites.
My point still stands. They actively hunted in some way the species of Titanoscogera, Muto Prime
So
being responsible for Dagon's death.
Well, the same is also said of the V-Rexes and the Kongs too. And given the fact that Kong is the only member of his species and we see a whole family of V-Rexes, it's pretty safe to say that the V-Rexes were hunting the Kongs to a significant degree that we could also say that the V-Rexes are well adapted to this point of hunting the Kongs. Because actually, let's go this way, which is, I think it's the world of Skull Island V-Rex versus Kong. I know they talk about it in the book, and I wish I picked up this book when I had the chance, but
well, the Unnatural History video will suffice.
I mean, we can do the Unnatural History. I can do that video as well, so because it also serves my point. So we'll do it from this one.
I love that video. I love that video so much.
I have problems with its Nave's comment, but overall, as a natural history of Skull Island video, for the most part, it's pretty good. So we can do this. We'll share entire screen, streamception, and do low volume there. Actually, no, because I don't want to hear any of this. Okay, there we go. And he doesn't have any actual footage of the movie, so I don't have to worry about stopping. And since
I think he discusses it in the Mega Primatus Kong segment.
I think he discusses a little bit of it here, but also the Primatus Kong points. So I want to go over both just to refresh myself.
Yeah, fair.
So
the shape of the head had changed, and the snout had become buttressed with a ridge of bone. This being more prevalent in bulls suggests that it played a role in combat for territory. Every adult V-Rex bore a tapestry across its face, crisscrossed with scars, calluses, and growths from hunts, kills, fights, and mates in their violent lifestyles. The forelimbs were marginally larger and also had an extra finger to assist in pinning kills to the body for more efficient movement of its food. V-Rex also had noticeably more compact torsos, with far fewer ribs than Tyrannosaurus and greatly reduced gastralia too. Whilst this allowed the V-Rex great mobility, it's possible this adaptation could have less beneficial origins. Skeletal defects in animals suffering severe inbreeding depression are frequent, and one of the most common is those of the lumbar spine and ribs.
It might actually be at the combat, so let me just skip a little bit.
Too, as this is the intention behind the trio of the V-Rex scene.
No, I said it might actually be. It might be at the Kong parts. I'm just going to skip a little bit.
Artist Greg brought the KT extinction and numerous other sweeping changes in the relatively poor genetic diversity from mutations after all, even if genetic inadequate eggs in a giant mound of Urinatosaurus. For this bizarre, huge edible, the chicks' extremely longer limbs and lighter build, they were built for speed and agility, and with their barred coloration, they were superb jungle hunters. Until adulthood, the siblings would stick together, starting off with lizards and centipedes as their primary fare, but shift. Carnivores, when occurring in plus rare or wait around, disparate ones between the adults too. Females preferred the forest edges where they could explore for future nesting sites and tend to the current ones. With no such commitments, the adult bulls preferred the most open territories where they could swing their weight around. Despite this partitioning, V-Rex was still fiercely territorial. The Dawn Chorus reinforced their position and claims to the territory, and waste was expelled along borders to demarcate the boundaries. The smell of such markings and the sound of the roar could tell V-Rex much about the physical condition of that territory's owner. As such, conflict was minimized, and in the event of two evenly matched V-Rex meeting, it was typically settled with a dispute of who had the loudest roar. In the event of neither backing down, they'll hunt, and may even attempt to move were happy predators. For female or vulnerable Feroctus or Brontosaurus, male and an from the balloon-like scales with a vintage factor of old.
Yeah, so might actually be at the Kong part. So, yep. So you were right. That's at the Kong part. So
and he doesn't really discuss the V-Rex versus Kong stuff in there. I think he saves that.
Yep, there it is.
Being a match for the assorted theropods and therapsids on the island. The most frequent challenger to the silverback's troops was Vastatosaurus rex. The final male of Skull Island was not an anomaly, and the numerous bones of its predecessors in the mountains show that this conflict was one that had gone on for centuries, with good numbers of the adult apes receiving bone-deep wounds that would never heal. Whilst it may be tempting to describe the two species as having a rivalry, the reality of such interactions was often far simpler, in that the Tyrannosaur simply viewed the apes as food, especially the females and youngsters. In return, Megaprimatus Kong were understandably hostile to the V-Rexes on sight, and would even kill young individuals if they got the chance to eliminate future threats. There was no resource the two competed over, it was just primal aggression. Sub-adult V-Rex, more often frequenting the forests in a rush to claim their own territory and laden with teenage confidence, were often in direct conflict with the troops. Despite the power and savagery of the two species, it was rare for adults to succeed in killing their opponent. The huge gin-trap jaws of the V-Rex were impressive weapons all on their own, and the Great Apes were strong, dexterous, and smart enough to use tools to even the playing field. Clashes were short and savage wounds common, but one party typically backed down when the odds began to tip out of their favor. Only rarely did the stakes become high enough for the struggle to escalate to life and death. King Kong himself was a veteran fighter, and was able to take on a pair of adult V-Rex and one sub-adult, not through brawn, but brains, which was the greatest advantage the apes had over the dinosaurs. Kong used the broken terrain to his advantage, splitting up his opponents after neutralizing the easiest target first and quickest with tool use, when he crushed its head beneath a boulder. If not for the chasm he flung the two adults into, it's questionable how long even the king may have been able to last against a pair of adult Vastatosaurus. But by taking the fight to the vines, he was able to divide and conquer, using far greater mobility to fight them one at a time in an environment that far better suited him, and also allowed him to kill the most dangerous target, the bull. Again, the final showdown may have been a lot more dangerous if he hadn't left himself with the more elderly matriarch, Rex. The final confrontation shows Kong's most important trick, that he understood the use of controlling the jaw.
I think that also generally, I don't think any of this later commentary on the fight is in the book, but it also comes off as conjecture because at least Jackson felt that the male V-Rex had been the one to give Kong some of the wounds that he received. And the other issue too is that even though he says that he split them up with tool use, even without in the environment, even without either the tools or the environment, Kong had taken several direct hits from all of them and not really been all that damaged by any of them fighting him. So again, it breaks the illusion of how realistic Kong and Skull Island are overall to me.
Part of me fair. Part of me feels like in this video that he's a little bit biased because he says Kong 05 is tied with Jurassic Park as his favorite film ever made. So I part of it to take into account, which Jurassic Park
because he also literally doesn't include the V-Rex literally just biting down on his shoulder because he shows that one of them getting knocked down by the log and then flipping the other one into the canyon and cuts that part out entirely. So I'm not sure if it's his bias or something else.
Also,
what's up, Joe?
just want to shout out Min for the Windman's comment further up. V-Rex versus Skullcrawler.
Just by size, it's gonna be the Skullcrawler.
Assuming it's a more juvenile one, yeah, Skullcrawler easily. They're way more versatile and way faster.
As well as they can shrug off light machine gun fire. So
yeah.
And someone says, when is Legendary going to give the fans what they want and make your guts all right? Let's also talk about the fact that, and I've already brought this up in another stream, but yeah, Jack is a nothing character. And the writers specifically made him an almost nothing character because of the decisions and how they felt about Jack and Kong as characters. Yep. There's a mute. And I'll do this too. So, again, if any of you guys want to defend the film, you're more than welcome to. So, put in. There it is. It's another invite into here. So, if you want to talk to me directly and say how much you like this film, you're more than welcome to. But what I will do is I'll share my screen again.
Sorry, that was my garage.
You're good. So
I'll be right back.
You're good. And this allows me time to set up. This. And okay. And that's the 33. There's the 05 one, yeah. Bruce right there. His. So generally, when it comes to Jack Driscoll as a character, in the original film, you have him being first mate, whereas he's the writer in the 05 version. The problem is that when it comes to Jack's character, they specifically in the commentary mention how they didn't want Jack to be this kind of action hero because they didn't want a quote unquote He-Man type fighting against Kong and essentially two macho alpha males being Jack and Kong fighting over Andaro, because I forget who one of the other writers was. It was, I think it was one of the female writers. So Kong 05 writer based on starring. Yeah, I think yeah, it's either Walsh or Bowens, but I'm not sure which one of them's on the audio commentary. I think it was Fran Walsh. The problem is that they feel that in their case, when they're talking with Jackson, is that the story of King Kong is about Kong and Anne, and because they view Jack as almost an obstacle in this movie, he doesn't really have anything to do in the version. So instead of having him be the first mate and have him be a quote unquote action hero, he becomes a writer. But because the film ultimately wants to follow the same beats as the original film and have Jack and Anne fall in love, they have to go through the rigmarole on the ship and on Skull Island, which again, Jack and Anne don't have too much of a relationship in terms of like scenes on Skull Island. All of it's developed on the ship. And that's why you have to introduce Bruce Baxter to have his scene where they reintroduce lines from the 33 version, which are considered like probably yikes to a lot of people. And because you have Bruce messing with the lines to have them be the original lines, Jack is able to respond
Hey,
and
Zim,
essentially
can
be
you
an
hear me?
audience surrogate. Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't hear you, just in case.
Are you saying you can't hear me? That's weird. Huh. That's super strange that Vic can't hear me. Everyone can hear me just fine, right? One second. I love the audio troubles that happen during a live stream. Yeah, he can hear you. Yeah, that's strange. Okay. Real quick. Also, you ever think the more scientifically accurate adjacent dinosaur context for the fantasy of the film itself? Yeah, I think so. Because they aren't retro dinosaurs. They are fantasy dinosaurs with a few spikes here and there, so they kind of look quote unquote retro. But ultimately, you have raptors, which the only reason why they're changed was because they wanted to have raptors in the 96 version of their script because Jurassic Park was big at the time and raptors were popular. So they had to do something to change them. The brontosaurs don't really look like retro brontosaurs, and like Jack calls them apatosaurs, but like switches between the names, which is kind of irrelevant. But the problem is that they essentially, besides like their head, which looks kind of retro-y, and them just kind of being a flat color, they don't look like classic retro sauropods. So there's that. The Ferrectus doesn't really look like a retro ceratopsian. It just looks like a fantasy ceratopsian. The Leucocristus, we don't really get to see those in the movie too much because the only one we see is the dead one. So we can't really comment on that. But just for the sake of that, because we can do a little tangent for that before I go back to what's it called? Before I go back to Jack's character. So Skull Island 05 dinosaurs. So yeah, let's just look at the Leucocristus and let's just compare that to a retro hadrosaur. It's a good one, and yeah, another good one. Like, just generally, they don't have a super retro appearance. They just look like dinosaurs of their era. And, like, again, a more modern hadrosaur. Also, again, more modern. Very similar. I know this isn't actual Kong 05 art. This is, I know that is. There isn't really too much, honestly, of the Lego Christos. But even looking at other stuff as well, I just saw it. Where was it?
I'm back.
Oh, you are back. Welcome back, sir. Right
Yeah.
now, we're just
My
talking
brothers
about.
were- Oh,
Oh, your brother's there as well? Okay.
my brothers were oogling over upcoming Lego sets. So
Ah, okay.
specifically the Dark Falcon.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, at the moment I am just talking about how the Skull Island dinosaurs aren't really retro dinosaurs. They're just kind of fantasy dinosaurs.
They're
Which-
Spec Evo.
They're Spec Evo, which in that case, cool. But like, if you're gonna do a remake of Kong 05, then Spec Evo retro dinosaurs, in my opinion.
Mm.
Because like, I could see any other Spec Evo project produce this, that. No, that's retro. I just
The Dimetrodon thing that they had.
like
the-
even this. I know this is like let's call it. That's kind of more retro. That's definitely not retro.
Nah.
Not really retro. Also not retro. This is like I think one of the earlier VRX concepts. At least that's closer to a retro. And then like again, this isn't connected to the 05 Kong at all. This is I know King Rex
There was
design.
there
Like,
was also the Dimetrodon one at one point. That one's pretty freaky. That one's pretty retro.
for which one, the Photodons?
No, the Dimetrodon. There was a Dimetrodon based one at one point. Let me look for it. Because it was it was in the mountain ones on the Skull Island.
This one right there. Yeah.
Uh,
Or this one?
no, Dimetro. One sec. That one, yeah.
This one?
Malevolsaurus, that one.
Wait.
Yeah. Sorry, Malevolsaurus. My stream was delayed.
So this one.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
stream was delayed. Malevolsaurus.
Gotcha. And Vic's back. I think he said that he couldn't hear me, which is
Yep.
odd.
I couldn't hear you for a while there.
That's
I don't know why.
strange. Okay.
But yeah, that definitely looks like it would be retro, considering Dimetrodon at the time was not seen as a not dinosaur.
Yeah, but like, let's see. Let me bring that up. Retro.
A part of me wants to try to develop my own, like, quote unquote, Skull Island ecosystem that serves as a hodgepodge of pretty much every single version of King Kong in the past. So, like, a skull crawler, two-legged lizard creature, a V-Rex, an eater, something. Hell, maybe
Like,
like
The other
like
thing
that.
too, when it comes to Dimetrodon, is that you don't even like during the 05 period, Dimetrodon doesn't really change much in its interpretations until into the later 2000s. Like even with this one here, it's really only into the like the 2020. It says the
Yeah, but
2020s, but I'd say like the late
yeah.
2010s is when you get
Yeah, but the
Dimetrodon really
fact-
changing.
But the fact that it's included among dinosaurs as a whole is something that I would say is the retro part. That's
You
something
can
that
call it retro, but like one, it's not in the film, and two, out of what we see, that is supposed to be like more retro. Most of the
Okay.
designs aren't that retro to begin with.
Okay.
Because let me go
Also,
to the
would you-
Brontosaurs real quick.
Would you consider the Photodon retro?
No,
Okay.
just because it has scales and its tail kind of drags doesn't really, in my mind, make a dinosaur retro. Like actually, that's perfect right there. Those two are right next to each other, so I can collapse all of these. So with the brontosaurs that we see, this is the skeleton for one of them, and then Aspidorsis is a different sauropod entirely. But even here, we see with the sauropods, their tails are above the ground versus most older retro depictions of sauropods, you see their tails dragging. And again, and besides like the heads just kind of generally being okay, closer, like the Brontosaurus is the closest you get in all of the dinosaurs in the movie to being the closest to its retro counterpart.
Mhm.
The V-Rex in certain shots, when it's rearing up, is close to a
Like that kind of shot, you
retro-
get a lot of a retro look, and I feel like
Kind
the head
of.
shape. I feel like the head shape as a whole would suit a retro look for the V-Rex.
for the V-Rex.
Yeah.
because let's even
Granted, albeit a very exaggerated one.
because even if you're looking at like, for example, Wanji, meat eater. Let's see. And that's I forgot. No, it's not that movie.
No.
Unknown Island, actually.
I would say Planet of Dinosaurs, actually, for an example. Because no, that was
Actually-
77.
No, Planet of Dinosaurs can also count too.
I rewatched that one before 65. I'm actually surprised how much I enjoyed it.
Planet of Dinosaurs. Yeah. I can count this one too. And again, another example of a retro sauropod. Again, for the 05 Kong, the only reason why it looks kind of retro is the skin texture being similar. But let me write that down, remove that. But with Guanji, with Meat Eater, even with Unknown Island, the only reason why its teeth are showing too much is because of how the suit's made. And the closest one to having like the exposed teeth all the time is the Planet of the Dinosaurs T-Rex, which I wish I can get. There you go, that's better.
I'm actually really surprised how much I enjoyed that movie.
It's an okay movie. And again, like the issue too is that with the V-Rex, I'll just have to do another.
I find it really funny
Yes.
how classic dinosaurs had like pre-revolution had lips, then took the lips away, and then
Yeah, and then they came back. Yeah,
That's
because
really
it's really only things like mosasaurs and stuff where you see them with dinosaurs having like a lot of exposed teeth.
Yeah.
What's the? Oh no, is it 10? Not 10 million HBC. Ceratosaurus. 1 million. Yeah, I think it's 1 million years. Yeah, it's 1 million years BC.
Yeah, 1 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Ceratosaurus.
even with the Ceratosaurus here, you don't have super exaggerated teeth. And same thing with the Allosaurus. Like, if its mouth's closed all the way, you're probably not going to see any of its teeth. Same thing for the Ceratosaurus. Whereas T-Rex,
Maybe if you could also pull up the Lost World, the original one,
yeah,
for-
in the OG
for
Lost
another-
World, Lost World 25.
because that's another Willis O'Brien creation to my recollection. So,
No, it is. Yeah, you're right.
World.
Lost World 25. Jurassic Park, I swear. There we go, yeah. And again, you don't really see exposed teeth on theropods. Whereas with the V-Rex, it's very clear that they're taking more inspiration from modern depictions of tyrannosaurs, where obviously with Jurassic Park, you see it as a big influence. And because the script was like the original King Kong script was made around 96,
Yeah, it was
you're
96.
having that influence.
It was 3 years after Jurassic Park. Granted, they actively tried to go different from Jurassic Park, and it shows with the raptors, which I actually really like.
Well, the thing is that raptors just aren't retro dinosaurs, and like the inclusion of raptors just immediately signals that you're trying to go more closer to like Jurassic Park era stuff. Because even looking at all their art here, it's not very retro inspired. It's very much closer to a modern depiction.
Is that a Carnotaurus?
Yeah.
Huh. My boy.
I know in the commentary they originally they were going to have Carnotaurs in place of the Photodons, I believe. So
that explains that one design.
yeah.
So,
And again, all the designs like the pre Kong stuff all just come across as closer, like something that would be from like a JP era of prehistoric film rather than trying to actually be as retro as possible. And the problem with that is that it comes across as off because they do a great attention to detail with a costume design and trying to make sure Depression era New York looks like Depression era New York. But with the dinosaurs, they like the whole ecology of Skull Island is trying to be Spec Evo rather than a retro 30s Lost World.
Part of me
Sea Monster's
feels
back.
like Kong Skull Island, with that in mind, a part of me feels like Kong Skull Island did a better job with the retro stuff. Granted,
Really?
that
For which things?
for specifically with the skull crawlers,
Like
like if they were gonna do a modernization or something of the two-legged lizard, I feel like that would be some sort of direction they would go with.
I
Granted,
guess.
Granted, design-wise, not behavior-wise, the skull crawlers are basically Gyaos without the wings and laser breath.
Yeah. What's interesting here is that this Ceratopsian design looks more retro than the Feroctus we actually see in the movie. And it's like this is like change up the anatomy a little bit, and this is actually would fit really well as like a fantasy dinosaur, but in like a retro classic style Skull Island.
I think one simple fix for the Photodon, actually, since you said it's not as retro, I think you could keep the quadrupedal stance if they made it something like what people imagine, what the original version of Iguanodon looked like. Like, if it did something like that, maybe.
Yeah, because
breaking
like,
up.
no, you're doing fine. Like
Am I breaking?
looking at it, no, you're still fine. Like it looks like a fantasy creature, whereas like you could probably like the closest dinosaur it looks like is a Crystal Palace Megalosaur, but you can even look at how some people try to reconstruct those. Again, modernized, but still it's closer to this than like the Photodon is. Really keeping it on model there. And trying to modernize it a bit too much there. With the exaggerated head and the exaggerated claws, is like my issue with that. Let's see if there's any. That's a Matt Frank one. And again, keeping it like pretty close to the actual sculpture itself, which is pretty good.
Where are we at this debate right now? Yeah, I just kind of had some things kind of come up that just kept me really busy, and but I think I've sorted it out. You know, the
You're
echo
good.
issue, hopefully.
I can't hear the echo anymore, and Minecraft dropped out, so let me bring him back in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I generally right now we're just talking about how the
designs
05
and
King Kong
matches.
designs aren't really retro; they're just kind of fantasy-esque, and because Kong 05 is trying to be less 30s adventure film and more like Heart of Darkness, they fit with what they're trying to do. But if I wanted to do Heart of Darkness, I just breed Heart of Darkness. I don't really need super grim dark looking dinosaurs for it. Like, actually, speaking of grim dark, let me pull up a Saurus from Warhammer. Oh, no, it's not a Saurus. I mean a Carnosaur. My bad. I'm sorry, Lizard Man fans.
You basically
Yeah.
got an idea what I was
Like,
saying about the.
Like that would not look out of place on Skull Island and Kong 05, but that would look super out of place in like a retro style paleo type thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I think they're essentially just grimdark fantasy dinosaurs.
So is the issue that you have like a preference over like how dinosaurs would be stylized in, or the creature design in King Kong?
So I can take it or leave it. It's just it's purely personal. It doesn't affect the story at all. But
Right.
for me, I think that if you're gonna remake King Kong and have it set in the 30s, then have dinosaurs based on dinosaur depictions from the 30s. Don't try to make them modern style dinosaurs with quote unquote retro like aesthetics to them, because then they just look out of place and weird. Like the V-Rex stuff wouldn't look out of place in Warhammer. The Venatosaurs really are only designed so that they don't get mistaken for JP Raptors. The Brontosaurus is the closest to being a retro style dinosaur, and even then it still has some small issues, but again, it's the closest. And then you have the Feroctus, which doesn't appear in the movie properly. It's in the extended cut only, but it just looks like a fantasy Ceratopsian. Again, wouldn't look out of place in Warhammer, wouldn't look out of place in like as like a just real dinosaur, but it doesn't look like a retro Ceratopsian. And then you have the Pteranodon, which replaces the Brontosaurus in its original scene, but is again a totally fantasy creature.
Right. Yeah.
And
I mean,
Photodon just doesn't work.
And the Photodon also just again looks like something out of Warhammer. Which again, there is nothing. I love the Carnosaurs from Warhammer, but I don't want them at King Kong.
yeah. Well. I guess the kind of thing about what I could say in defense is like, well, Peter Jackson's kind of like doing his own sort of take on like the Skull Island wildlife, pretty much. That's like, basically, you pretty much would definitely recognize the V-Rex as being his equivalent of the classic 33 T-Rex, pretty much. It's just like his own sort of take on it, and it's not really. Like, it's not meant to like to be like to replace it or supplant it or anything. It's just kind of like,
is that it kind of is, because the whole idea of them being dinosaurs who have evolved for millions of years, instead of just being dinosaurs, instead of it kind of being like a place frozen in time, the dinosaurs have all evolved, and the idea of the V-Rex is supposed to be a bigger, badder T-Rex, but then you have 3 V-Rexes instead of one classic retro T-Rex are able to put up a worse fight against Kong in this film, so they don't feel like more intimidating as antagonists. They just feel like replacements.
Well, what I was pretty much getting at isn't so much to supplant the T-Rex in terms of like the evolutionary stance. What I just kind of mean is like in the meta sense. But I'd say like you could say, since Kong seems to be like a bit more driven to protect Anne, like it just kind of like he's not just fighting for himself, but he's fighting for something else, pretty much. Like in a normal circumstance, like he would, maybe
in a normal circumstance, he probably would have won quicker, because again, he's handily able. Like we can. One sec. Nope, I didn't. Did I? Yes, I probably did. No, I did not. Again, at this point here, you have Kong manhandling the biggest of the V-Rexes, gets surprised, and then is able to shake them both off here. So at this point here, it's been shown that Kong is able to have a standoff with 2 V-Rexes versus the 33 one, which is a far more pitched battle between the two. Do I already have? No, I do not. So I can bring that up again. And real quick, the V-Rexes do look like Warhammer Carnosaurs. Yeah. And like the only reason why I made that connection is because I got more into Warhammer, and I got into Warhammer because of 40k, not fantasy. But when I started getting more into fantasy and saw the Carnosaurs, I'm like, they literally just look like just long-armed V-Rexes, kind of.
Thing is, I'm more forgiving for the V-Rexes than I am for the T-Rexes in 65, because those are actual Tyrannosaurus Rex. Make them look like, full-fledged Tyrannosaurus Rex. You don't need to go 100% accurate, but like, this is a bit much.
The thing that, like, on principle, the only reason why I will forgive the 65 Tyrannosaurs more is because they, like, you have someone actually go up against the dinosaur with, like, advanced weaponry and win, instead of it being super tropey and like, oh, my gun, which is super advanced, is somehow not able to affect these giant dinosaurs, even though, like, in a regular circumstance with regular arms, you're going to be able to take down a dinosaur in most cases. And even in the 05 Kong film, you see that happen.
I think maybe, I mean, it's been a bit since I've even watched 65. I'd probably have to look over that scene again, because I'm pretty sure that there may have been like instances where the characters kind of had plot armor in there. Where
thing is, he doesn't really do much damage at first, and then it's after the whole I love you, Dad sequence where he goes rage mode and then basically 5 shots one of them, then takes out the other one with pretty much ease.
No, I think he headshots one, and then he takes out the ankles of the second one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sure it's not? So is there like actually like a mechanical reason in there, or is it just kind of like, suddenly he's able to just shoot them down?
No, it is a mechanical reason. The gun stalls.
The gun stalls.
I think it stalls for a little bit, then he hides under a piece of debris, until eventually the girl distracts one of them.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, got that.
Okay.
The fact that I
Probably
still remember that movie. The fact that I still remember that movie is
Number 165 fan here.
I hate that movie. I hate that movie so much. I was expecting more from the writers of A Quiet Place. One of my favorite movies ever made. So
But generally, going back to King Kong, because we derailed a lot. I was gonna talk more about Jack Driscoll's character because before you left C, but yeah, Jack Driscoll's character is butchered in this movie, and he's split between these three characters. One of them essentially doing everything his original counterpart did, even though in the commentary they said they didn't want an action star fighting against King Kong, which is probably the only reason why Hayes ends up being killed. But then we also have Bruce in here who's saying like, oh yeah, action heroes don't look like me, even though you have him and him both doing action star things in the movie, which makes his entire character seem superfluous. And it only adds later on at the end where Carl is like making up the story of Skull Island and has Bruce there being the one who saved the girl instead of Jack or Hayes, who actually did try to save Anne.
Given like the period context set in the movie, it's like you pretty much think that the line about real heroes don't look like me, it's kind of stemmed from the fact that heroes like in the movies typically kind of look like someone like Bruce Baxter as opposed to who's Kyle Chandler as opposed to Adrian Brody in this film, who would just kind of seem more of like
Adrian Brody in the like we could say that, but in the looking at the two, neither of them are like more quote unquote handsomer than the other, and neither of them are more like overly muscular than the others. Like Bruce isn't like a big hulking guy who just so happens to be a cowardly actor. He's a pretty average sized guy, and same thing with Adrian Brody. Like again, totally irrelevant to my point, but just for the fun of it, I just want to see Adrian Brody. I just want to see their heights. So Adrian's 6'1", and Kyle. Oh, and I don't want Chandler. So it's funnier because Adrian Brody's taller than Kyle Chandler, but we're supposed to say that, oh yeah, real action heroes don't look like me. Even and I guess you could say like, oh well, that means Adrian would probably be lankier. Again, they're both like pretty average size guys. But then you have Hayes, who's kind of bigger, more muscular, and he's essentially Jack in the movie. Even in the audio commentary, they call Hayes essentially the original Jack in this movie. And I guess the only reason why he's in this movie is because they couldn't think of a better writing way to get all the same plot points of the 33 film without having a character be original Jack. But then they decided to kill him off to advance Jimmy's character, and Jimmy's character really goes nowhere by the end of it.
Yeah, that's one thing I agree, where splitting up the characters really hinders the movie and the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have so many plot lines to follow.
I can agree with that part. But even then I feel like Baxter was absolutely the best handle of the three, at least for me.
Well, what was his character arc?
Learning to become the action hero that people saw.
There's basically there's set up where he's like real heroes don't look like me. He pretty much like walks off because obviously the whole basically right after the craziness of the stampede pretty much. But then he pulls through when he saves them from the bugs.
Doesn't he sort of revert back though?
Yeah, he reverts back. I'll show the scene exactly where he reverts back.
I've been thinking a lot of, and also with this stream, I thought a lot about the whole King Kong Fantasia thing that they showed at G-Fest. That was cool.
Suck.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit further back because he's not even there once Kong breaks through the chain.
Yeah. Yep, right here.
No, I see it.
He literally reverts in his character because, like, the whole idea of him, now he's the big hero. The fact is, again, he's not Jack Driscoll, so they can't have him actually step up and be the action star because we have to have Jack and Anne complete the roles. And speaking as well, another problem with this film is that in the later spot where we have them all brought back to New York, Jack has his revelation while he's sitting in the audience watching a play he made for Anne that's essentially telling him, hey, just say the words that he say that he loves Anne instead of trying to infer it. And again, given the fact that it wasn't like winter when they left for Skull Island, but then it's snowing when they get back to Skull Island. I mean, not Skull Island, when they get back to New York. You're saying that Jack only has this revelation now while sitting in the audience of his own play that he wrote these lines for. Does he have this revelation? All the while.
Sorry, you go ahead.
No. That's you can go.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if there's anything I could say, it does kind of beg the question of like, if we're like considering that the final part of the final act in New York is supposed to take place like at some point in December, because we kind of see like
around Christmas, because we have the Christmas lights in.
Yeah, Christmas lights. So it kind of makes it. So it just kind of makes me. So perhaps maybe like if it took them like how long it kind of took them to get to Skull Island, like when they started out from New York to Skull Island and then to go back, like what the passage of time was. I will say it is kind of. It's kind of confusing once you start taking the tie-in game into consideration when like some text there says that when they're at Skull Island it's like set in March, so it's like wait a minute, it takes them 9 months. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that may have just been that, like maybe it's not exactly like that in the movie, but
no, I think like that's just a thing of the tie-in game, because there's like the whole like considering how very different the events of the game are from the movie, I don't really take what the tie-in game says as having too much of an effect on the movie.
Because for starters, in the game, like characters like Lumpy pretty much get killed much earlier in the story of the game than in the continuity of the movie, and probably something different.
And here's another thing too, bringing up Lumpy. That like during the auto commentary, they make way too many references to certain scenes being goofs or gaffes, and it makes it very clear that like despite the fact that they wanted to make Skull Island feel far more dangerous, they try to have too many funnier moments to like break the tension when like in reality they don't really help in those aspects. Like in the insect pit scene, you have Carl fighting off like dozens of Weddas and making all like those goofy noises. It really takes you out of that scene when you see him fight, especially like not including the fact that it's Jack Black. Like I can see if I can pull up the scene here in a moment.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I didn't really get that.
Because
I don't know. It didn't seem silly to me. I don't know.
Hide. Because you have him like super depressed, and the other thing too is that you don't see him fight the Pteranodon at all. So like throughout this entire like film, he doesn't come across as like a fighter, and like he doesn't really fight off the natives all that much. But then
that is also
you have him go from like here, and then Jack's been shown to be way more of a fighter, but he's like being swarmed by the Weddas. But then you have him go like
straight up Donatello on them.
Adrenaline, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But then like look at how many Weddas are there.
Oh, that poor guy.
Let's just get this out of the way. The whole like leech thing. I forgot what they were named. Yeah, that.
Yeah,
that is a brutal way to go. That is not a good way to go.
No.
Ooh.
Yeah.
One sec. Where's the other scene?
Yeah, the leech thing is always what gets me.
I forgot what they were named.
Yeah, they're called Carnictus.
Carnictus, thank you. Carnictus. But
like it. Is him just fighting off all those guys without getting any of them really on him versus Jack, who's in the same situation. And like even here, how many of them are converging on him? And even we could say it's adrenaline. The only time we see this kind of adrenaline boost for anyone is Carl. Nothing really happens for Jack. Jimmy doesn't really get swarmed at all. And
granted, with Jack and Jimmy, there wasn't really the largest, like, Jimmy isn't feeling unbridled rage or really isn't going mad at any point. Carl himself is.
Yeah.
well, considering the situation that Jimmy's in, because this is right after Hayes dies too. And again, we see both Jimmy and Jack fighting off these things as well. So, like, it's really just to have Carl have his moment. And again, this other scene right here, on sec. Let's do not, like, look at all of that, and him kind of just spinning it around his head like that. It, like, and even again in the audio commentary, they do mention that they have those moments in there, and even the moments here with Jimmy like closing his eyes to shoot to alleviate the tension, because they have like right here where he's like, tell him to be still, and then like he's like, I am standing still. He's holding the thing there. And then where he also like almost shoots off his balls as well in that other scene. But then here's the other thing too, is that I'm on, if it's extended, yeah. So it is right here. They do have the extended version. So this whole thing about Bruce no longer becoming a coward was never shown in the theatrical version of the film. And that we also have the closest thing we get to Jimmy's completed arc taken out of the film as well.
Yeah. That's why I would say probably stick with the extended cut, because there is a little more there.
Right.
Yeah, but even
Especially-
then, I don't
especially
think they do a
singing.
good enough job either. That's another problem.
Yeah, the extended cut was that was my first interaction. That was my first watch of King Kong 05. Like, and we didn't even know it was the extended cut. By we, I mean me and my brother. And then when we watched it again about like 2 years later, we watched the original version and was like, wait, where's the scene with the Ceratops?
Yeah, I mean, I've usually seen, I mean, like, the version I've seen the most amount of times is the theatrical cut, but and I have watched the extended version pretty much at least like one other time. But I could definitely say it's like, man, you could, some of these scenes you could have just kept in. It pretty much would have helped.
Well, they could have helped, but I also think that there's still too little in some of those scenes to really help as much. And the thing is that the film is already like 3 hours, but there's still very little character that's given to some of them. And throughout the commentary, Jackson is lamenting how little time he actually had. And I feel like if he decided to focus less on these big spectacle action scenes, we actually probably could have had more time with these characters.
Yeah.
Because if you cut out the stampede and you have just the brontosaurus and you combine that with the swamp scene and don't even make it the same length as the extended cover, you have the brontosaurus and swamp combined scene being as long as both those two scenes together. If you cut that down in half, you have so much more time to dedicate to just character building. And considering the fact that we do have the characters who are in the going after and are characterized more, they still aren't characterized enough. They're only characterized enough to a point where you kind of feel bad that they die. Like, if Lumpy was not Lumpy, then his death would just be mortifying. It wouldn't really be sad at all.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I think that what we got in the film was like, it's not like that they're like the deepest characters by any stretch.
Well,
but I would
that's
say
the thing, is that they're not the deepest characters. And
neither were neither were the characters in 33. I would make, granted, it has been a bit since I've seen the original 33 movie, but I would make the argument that even in the original 1933 movie, the characters were not really as deep. In fact, here they were far deeper than they were in that film. I need to rewatch it, but
I would say that makes the 05 film look worse.
Yeah.
Because they could have added depth to the characters of the original, but instead they split them up.
I would make the case they very clearly tried, at least with both Carl and Anne. Jack,
here's the other problem too, is that
but with Carl and Anne,
Carl, they make a worse character because they don't understand Carl's character. Another thing too to point out is the fact that the original King Kong is only an hour 40 versus 05, which is 3 hours 21. So you have far more time with these characters, and you only get a little bit more characterization. And even if we were to compare them both like character to character, we see, at least in the original film with Jack, that he does have his rougher side, but he's far more caring of Anne, and we actually get to see his relationship with her bloom in a more natural way. Whereas in the 05 version, you have the one moment with them sort of meeting each other in the ship, and then moments of them just kind of staring at each other. And then I'm writing a play for you, which doesn't get followed up on until much later on in the film, where logically Jack should have come to this realization before he was sitting down watching his own play. So that's a problem there. Not to mention the fact that, again, having Bruce and Hayes there undermines Bruce's comments, but it also means that they needed a 33 style Jack character to get their story along to the points they needed to. And the death of the 33 Jack stand-in is really only to develop one character whose end to his arc isn't even shown in the theatrical version, which is the version most people have seen. And we don't get any follow-ups or resolutions to the character who is spurred on by Hayes' death. And even then, another problem too with Hayes' character is that he literally lampshades his death, because right when they're going through the tunnel and Hayes is shooting out before he gets grabbed by Kong, he literally tells Jimmy that whatever happens, you're going to have to go back. And then Jimmy's like, I'm not a coward, I ain't going to run. And Hayes is like, it's not about being brave. And it's right after that is when he dies. So that is like classic lampshading to his character. And then another problem is that with Carl, in the original movie, Carl doesn't do a good thing by capturing Kong, but his actions are all above board in the original film, and you can tell that he's far more genuine about the promises that he makes, whereas in this film, he's not only a hack, he does everything to screw over everyone. And then ultimately the realization that, he killed an animal that had feelings and stuff at the end doesn't really work, because he was never really set up to be like a guy who went from, it's understandable he is the way he is, or like he just made some wrong decisions. He was always just kind of like a slimy person, but they for some reason felt that they didn't do that to him, and that he was just he wasn't really like a villain. Like they continually say that Carl isn't a villain, he's just been pushed too far. But looking at everything, that isn't the case.
All right.
And that's why I would say that Carl and Jack are both better characters in the original. Martin says Lumpy was the cook in the novelization, but Charlie was the cook in the film. But they put Lumpy in the 05 variant, but kept Charlie, who doesn't do anything despite being in Search Party in this version. Yeah, well, it's Choi in this version. And again, I think that the only reason why Choi and Lumpy are both there is because Lumpy is from the book, so it's an inclusion from the book, so it's a deep cut. And then they include Choi because he's from the 33 film. And then because you have those two side characters who both visually look distinct, you can play off like people recognizing those cuts. And that's why like it hits more when you see Lumpy like trying to help Choi because of that dynamic. And like I would say like actually because I don't think either of you really answered this because you weren't there for it yet, but what are your thoughts on the natives?
I would say I like them. Like them. Everyone's really like how how just really just kind of creepy they are to juxtapose like the original, pretty much.
Minecraft?
Huh? What's up?
What are your thoughts on the natives?
I don't really have many thoughts on the natives themselves. I think for what they were going for, it gave a really interesting look at Skull Island, at this version of Skull Island. But yeah, I definitely think some things could have been changed.
Such as?
Maybe don't make them as violent as they were depicted. Like, tone the violence down a little bit. You can make them a bit, like, violence.
Okay, in
but
that case,
don't
why
go
is
for
that?
I don't know.
Well-
I haven't thought about the natives' depictions all that much and my thoughts on that.
Okay.
So,
Well, I would say that the fact that they pretty much like became like so violent, and and basically the very first interaction that these natives have with essentially like these completely just outsider strangers, they're just like who the fuck are you guys? Is Carl like looking like he's pretty much like chasing after a kid, one of the kids there, and not to mention, so they're just kind of like taking them down, and next thing, and there's also this the elder who pretty much like sees Anne, and they're just like, oh hey, we got a potential sacrifice, some sacrificial lamb potentially for Kong.
Mm-hmm.
So and I mean, I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into like as far as the natives being just as far as like characterization, but but the thing is, I would say I really do that's the thing, I really kind of appreciate them as far as like not just the aesthetic pretty much that they have going on, but also just kind of like they seem to be much more the way, like, not that the original didn't handle the natives well, it's just that I think this remake definitely makes them like a pretty effective sort of a threat.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say this. I would generally say that the natives are handled better in the 33 film than they are in the 05 film, because the chain of events does not muddle their intentions in the 33 film.
How so?
So here's, like, you can go through the scene right here. So we have Carl and has a misunderstanding with the natives. He says they're harmless, and then Mike dies. It's only after Mike dies that Anne screams, and then
there's Kong, right?
And then it's because of the fact that that Kong roars, that the natives then feel like they need to sacrifice someone to appease Kong, which is then why they start deciding to take Anne as a sacrifice, because at least logically in the natives' minds, these outsiders disturb the peace. Therefore, it has to be one of them to be sacrificed, because it's not the natives that disturb the peace, it is them. So logically, for the most part, the natives make sense. The problem being is that they kill Mike first, and because they kill him first, the only reason why Kong is roused is because of their actions. The logic that Jackson wanted to have, overall, generally in concept, makes sense, and the natives acting the way they do for the most part makes somewhat sense.
Well,
but because of the placement of these scenes, they are more in the wrong than the crew is, and that's why I don't feel like their depiction is like bad or offensive. I just feel like it's poorly handled. And I know someone says that they added subtitles and make them as more believable. I wouldn't say make it more believable. It would just make their logic make more sense. Whereas in the 33 film, we see them have their ceremony. The outsiders disrupt the ceremony, and they sort of go their separate ways. But due to the some breach in their culture, the natives then feel it necessary to do what they do. But it's far less muddled in the 33 film's case because of that train of logic. And then we also see the natives helping the crew try to stop Kong after. Whereas in the 05 version, when Kong comes back to the village, there are no natives to be seen at all, because after Anne is sacrificed, we never see any of the natives ever again, which is also really odd, to say the least. Like, the natives don't comment on the fact that when Kong broke through, or that these invaders were able to capture their god. And again, the film is 3 hours long, but none of this is commented on.
Well, I mean, this clip that you pulled up here, as I mentioned before about Carl offering the kid chocolate, and he's all like, "Here, take the chocolate," and the kid's resisting, and Carl's just not letting go, pretty much, and it takes for the kid to bite him, and then he starts chasing the girl. It's not in the clip that you pretty much got pulled.
It's on the clip, but it's right before here.
Well, considering that Carl is with these people, which includes Mike, I would say it's more the matter of like the natives, pretty much killed Mike just because because of like just the optics of this of what's going on with what Carl was doing.
But ultimately, like
I said, optics.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We could call it optics, but like you go from they're harmless.
Well, they don't understand. He hasn't hurt.
Like no. He's not saying that to the natives. He's saying that to his crew, but also the audience hears that. And then the next thing the audience sees is Mike getting impaled with the staff.
Well, he's telling. Well, it's less to do with the. Well, it's not really addressing to the audience in a meta sense. It's just addressing the characters. It's the universe.
Well, again, you can even if we say that's not addressing the audience and it's just addressing the characters. That still just looks really weird for an editing choice to have Carl reassure the crew and then have one of the crew members die before Kong is roused. But the logic Jackson had for the natives was that the only reason why they decided to be hostile was because Anne roused Kong. Well, that is the problem. Whereas with the 33 film, that train of breach of tribal ceremony for this capturing Anne is far clearer and far less muddy.
Well, I mean, looking at, I'm just kind of, mainly just kind of looking at the scene of how it's kind of done, because because mainly just the commentary doesn't necessarily, I think maybe in the commentary track he may have sort of overlooked this little the detail before Mike gets killed.
No, because they're doing it. They're doing the full commentary of the extended cut scene by scene. They're not like cutting between different moments. But again, even if I do not include the commentary, it looks worse if I don't include the commentary, because if I do not know the intentions of the natives at all, which makes them far more sympathetic based on what the director's telling me, based on what I've visually seen, outside of Carl like not even attacking, just being aggressive with one of their own, and the moment she gets back to like her group of people, Carl does not do anything, he's essentially backing off. They decide to then not like injure, full on murder one of them, and then we see another guy. What's it called? Yeah, we have that guy. Let's see if we can get that scene. Is it closer? Yeah, we have this guy, random guy who gets killed. So we have two people get killed, and again, we have no real context besides, like, we could say, oh, Carl acted out of line. Acting out of line without really any damage done to their tribe results in the, like, brutal deaths of one Mike, who we already set up as kind of just being a chill dude because he's the guy who gets confused for Jack Driscoll. So you're already, like, as an audience member, prepped to be more sympathetic to him because he has that awkward, funny moments. So he gets killed, but then we also have the random crew member who gets killed because he's expendable. We don't know anything about him, just random person, and that is for that scene there to show him die. That is the problem with the natives, based on how they edit the scene, but based on what they wanted to do, I guess it makes sense. But then they also overlook what they do to a character that they had already written stuff for and tried to make sympathetic, and then it results in a jumbled mess of intentions.
When does Anne scream and then provoke Kong?
Anne screams right here after Mike gets killed. So
yeah,
yeah, Kong's right away with it. Yeah, it's right there after Mike's already dead.
Yeah, yep, right here. Yep, right here, and right after that, she screams. Yeah, she screams because she sees this.
Not really, but
which one are we referring to? Skull Island or GXK?
In Skull Island, they're essentially non-entities in all honesty. And then in GXK and GVK, they're also just not that well written either because their lore keeps getting changed. And then like how the outside world should interact with them, also like the messaging for that changes. So yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. GXK's Iwis are.
But then like also the other thing too is that like people like have the issue with Engelhorn shooting one of the natives and it being like a commentary when this guy literally already killed one person and one of his other buddies already killed someone else. So Engelhorn did nothing wrong there.
You're saying someone in the commentary said Engelhorn did something wrong?
People be like, oh, well, the natives' depictions are bad because it's a stereotype and blah, 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 and it's bad. And, like, the Engelhorn and the crew responding back is, like, an example of imperialist violence, yada, yada, and, like, that kind of, like, response. And that, I think, is stupid, first off. So... And those are people who be like, oh, this part of the film is bad. I think that the native scene is jumbled, and that's why it's bad. They think it's bad because it's optically bad. We are not the same. Play Giga Chad music.
I wouldn't say it's optically bad because.
Well, no, to them it's considered bad optics.
Oh.
Fair
enough.
I mean, I just kind of like took it. I mean, mainly I just took it as like, you know, Engelhorn's kind of like, you know, like, yeah, he pretty much like shot down like, you know, shot down a native pretty much.
Who killed his crewmate?
He killed him. Yeah, he shot a native, but he was about to kill like for all he knew, he was about to kill like everybody that was there.
Probably, he was about to kill Carl, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not just his crew, but also Carl, you know, and for all he knows, Jack and Anne, because he doesn't really have any context about why the natives would particularly focus on Anne until much later on.
Yep, and again, the issue is that Engelhorn kills one native. In terms of the kill count, you have 3 sailors. Or technically 2 sailors and 1 film crew person to 1 native. Because after they raid the village, you never see any of the natives again. Because you have the one guy who's clubbed over the head and killed, that's 1 sailor dead. Mike's killed, and then you have the other sailor who's killed on the ship when they take Anne. So
I think the fact that the natives like don't really pretty much again.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm actually gonna have to be heading out now.
All right,
okay.
Peace out, man.
Peace.
All right, peace out. Zim, I am on your side for the most part, but I still like the movie. I think it's pretty good. Could have been better.
Yep, there you go. I mean, like, again, I still enjoy the film. I just don't think it's as good as I used to think it was.
Yep, right. That's right. You don't think it's as good as 98? Glad to
No,
hear.
oh, 98 still trash.
Yeah. Anyways, where was I? Like considering that, you know, the natives as far as their optics are kind of concerned, they basically, you know, like Engelhorn and his crew, you know, coming in with like essentially these boomsticks, you know, to quote Army of Darkness, you know, I guess it's kind of safe to say, like, well, shit, they may have outclassed us, so they probably, it's possible that they pretty much may have left, but yeah, I mean, it is kind of weird that the village is pretty barren by the time, you know, we get to the scene where Kong gets captured, but I would say it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility.
The problem with that is that, at least in the 33 version, they are scared off by gunfire, but then they come back to help try to stop Kong from breaking through. But because Kong is painted as purely sympathetic and not a monster really in this film, you can't really have that with the natives of this movie.
Well, did we pretty much see, you know, like in the original, did we pretty much see like how the natives and the Venture crew pretty much were able to like team up pretty much? Was there anything in the original to sort of like bridge that as far as like them going from like, we hate your guts, pretty much. To
Well, they don't hate their guts. It's more because of their customs that they kidnap Anne. But the ones that they're scattered after they come back to the village to try to get Anne for the first time, when they come back, they're just sort of not buddy, but they're just trying to stop Kong because Kong's the greater threat. But also, we do know that Engelhorn could speak to the natives if need be, based on the fact that he knew a word for friend close to their language. So, again, like that's one thing that's really overlooked when people look at the original Kong is the fact that the natives don't just kidnap Anne, they also play a part in helping capture Kong.
Right.
But people, like, I'm not sure why people seem to forget that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, maybe. I mean, I didn't forget that the natives pretty much helped. I was just wondering if there was like any sort of connective tissue to kind of like go from, and if there was, because I mean, I've only recently just watched the Peter Jackson film. I haven't had the time to watch the original or revisit the original. So, all right. So, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. My brothers were shouting. So.
No, you're good. Anyone got any super positives that they think are like highlights of the film's writing? Because I'm super curious.
Again, it's been a while since I've seen the 05 movie and the original King Kong. So, and frankly, I don't have as much energy to defend Kong 05 as I do King of the Monsters.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll defend its world building, but not really much of its writing. Because, its writing has flaws. Not as flawed as other King Kong movies, but...
Well, like, the thing with with Kong 05 is that you have the Dino De Laurentiis Kong there as well. And it's like, because of how that film is also really bad, people like seem to forget, oh yeah, the 05 Kong really just isn't that good either, in all honesty.
I'm imagining sentiment's going to lighten up later down the line, though. Yeah, it's been almost 20 years, so. I think the thing that really holds it up for me is the whole Spec Evo thing, because that's even retro stuff aside, this is just a really cool interpretation of Skull Island to me.
Here's the thing for me too with that is that most of the interesting Spec Evo stuff about Skull Island aren't shown in the movie. Most of that is relegated to specifically the book, which in that case, get a good enough world builder, we could add a myriad of things to Monsterverse Skull Island and the 33 film and even the Dino De Laurentiis film to make the world building just as interesting, and it would be just as valuable simply because of the fact that, like 05, they wouldn't be really shown on screen, so therefore their value would be just as great.
I have a feeling we're going to be coming back to this debate in 3-4 years' time when a certain somebody shows up.
I mean, what's it called? Boot camp's not that long, so
yeah.
Whenever he gets back, I will. The moment he tells me he gets back, I will gladly.
The moment he sees this video,
yeah,
I challenge you.
Oh, again. Black and I have not really disagreed on anything, so I will be more than happy to have a discussion with him on this.
I would gladly watch on the sidelines because I know you and he have very different viewpoints on this.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I have a question. How do you feel about Kong's characterization in this movie?
I think that they tried really too hard to make him sympathetic, and they lose the fact that the original film does have Kong out as a monster. There is a tragedy to him, but because they want to make the film about Anne, I watched the film with and without the commentary. They specifically said that the film is supposed to be about Anne and Kong, and not about anyone else, which is again why their characters are not as good. The problem with this is that with Anne, they give her far too much agency and make her far too connected to Kong to a point that the only reason why she has any revelations in her life up to this point is because of having a for the in all actuality a really terrible experience, and the only reason why she decided to go on the voyage in the first place was because she was a fangirl of a playwright. Because the only reason why she really says yes to Carl in this movie is because of the fact that Carl says that Jack Driscoll was writing the movie. And that's when she perks up and she's like, oh my gosh, Jack Driscoll's going to be there. And that's why we also have the scene where she's like rehearsing what she's going to say when she meets Jack Driscoll, gets dolled up in a costume. And then when she meets Jack Driscoll, she's like bumbling over herself. And she's like, oh, I love how you speak to the common language of the people. And like, that's why she's so just immediately attracted to him, because they want to have that Jack Ann connection, like the 33 film, as an homage, but they don't know how to write it in a way that is faithful to the 33 film, because so much has changed and they feel like Jack is an obstacle to that writing. And then the other thing is that the tragedy of King Kong, looking at the original King Kong, is that he chases beauty, and the reason he dies is because of beauty. And what's more tragic is that the beauty that he loves does not love him back. And that's all that hurts even more when you think about it like that. But in the 05 version, it's tragic because Kong died because of beauty, but the beauty is also sad too, because she also had felt something, not romantically, but she felt sympathetic for the monster, which isn't a monster. It's like trying to be a deconstruction, but it's also trying to be a love letter to the original, and then it fails trying to be either.
Fair enough.
The problem is that the reason why Kong being so sympathetic in the MonsterVerse works is because it's so divorced from the original 33 film in terms of what they do when they go to Skull Island. They could be like, so much has changed, they're doing something different story-wise with Kong. Okay, cool. Whereas with the 05 and the Dino film, they try too hard to be remakes of that specific film.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, I mean, would you pretty much say that perhaps, the fact that it, people kind of commonly refer to it as a remake, wouldn't it make more sense if we were to refer to it as a reimagining, pretty much? Because, reimagining.
I think that, semantic, I feel like the argument is almost a semantic one, because we could call it a reimagining. Same thing, we would say Kong 05 is a reimagining of the 33 story, where Kong Skull Island is a reimagining of the King Kong character. At that point, just calling a reimagining tries to divorce the film from its failings, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, we can. Well, not necessarily that. We could. I mean, you could just look at the film, where it works and where it doesn't work, on pretty much on its. God, I hate this. On its own merits, even when it is definitely still more or less very much
In that case, though, if we're gonna say that, looking at the film on its own merits, are we saying on its own merits in terms of how it reimagines scenes, or scenes that are entirely its own and plot points and elements that are specific to the 05 version? Because if we're gonna take it on its own with only scenes that are unique to the 05 version and commentary unique to the 05 version, then I'd say there aren't too many merits. And the merits I'd say that are well done in terms of writing, to the film's credit, are because of the 33 film. I can say that visually there's a lot of very well done scenes, how well they recreate Times Square to be historically accurate, really good. The scene where Kong is jumping from rooftop to rooftop, and then you see the Empire State Building looming in the background, very good shot.
Yeah.
The choreography with the biplanes, divorced from everything else that's going on writing wise, very good. But then there's so many other scenes that when you add them all together, does not make the film better than the sum of its parts.
like I said, King Kong 05 is not a film that I'm actively going to like. It's not one that I'm going to throw aside the writing of, mainly because I haven't really looked at. I haven't seen the movie in years, like I said. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm late. So
So
I-
like, and then another thing too is that just okay. So like, you know how people bring up the gonorrhea line from King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I probably not gonna be able to find it because it's not like an action scene. So it's probably not gonna be on YouTube. But there's a one scene when Carl is showing his like the first bits of his film to the producers before they talk about Skull Island and all. And Carl's like pitching like, oh, we're gonna go to this island. It's like primeval and stuff like that. And I'm gonna shoot my picture there. One of the producers is like, will there be boobies? And then Carl is like, boobies? And then like he just comes up with more creative words for boobs. And I think like to me, that has the same effect that the gonorrhea line has for a lot of people with KOTM because
God.
it takes a serious moment and then it releases it with a bit of out there comedy and that bathos humor for many in the King Kong's case, I will say this, it does diminish from the lines that were just made because it takes Carl like sending this picture, the allure of Skull Island, and then it makes you think, oh, he's talking about tits. Okay.
Well, in the context of that scene in 05, it's like the guy who's pretty much like saying like the Jikis bazooms. We want to see we have markets for people who want to see the natural bodies of the native girls. It's one of those guys is basically people who don't even take Carl seriously at this point because they pretty much
I think if I recall correctly, he's one of the guys who talks about Carl's work still being good, but it's just like he's not like it's mostly the other guy like with not like I don't think he has a toupee, but it's like other guy without the mustache. He's the guy who's more adamant about Carl being a hack and like his stuff just not being worth it. The other guy's like, oh, Carl still has like we could use the footage, but like it comes so out of left field, especially given the fact of how Skull Island is portrayed later on. It feels like they really just wanted to get a laugh.
I would also make the case that it shows a disbelief because Skull Island at that point is considered legend. So it could show that this guy that they think he's making this stuff up. So it's like,
we could say this, but they could still do that in a contextually more logical set of dialogue. And then the other thing too is that like they paid so much attention to the historical accuracy of New York, but when it came to like characterizing some of these characters, they feel like they're coming out of like the 2000s in that sense. Because when they go like later on another scene, they talk about the legend of Kong, the sailors, and Lummy talks about like neither a beast nor man. Carl's like, that's probably like a lion or a tiger. And he's like, oh, monsters belong in B movies. In the 30s, there weren't really B movies. Like there weren't B movie monsters at that point. So the idea of saying monsters belong in B movies seems hyper anachronistic.
The concept of the B movie wasn't really a thing until the 50s.
Like there were definitely like hokey effects for monsters in films earlier than King Kong, but there wouldn't be enough of them to be like, oh, it's a trope that you have B movies with like hokey monsters in them.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, in the context of, for all we could pretty much know, Carl could be referring to as B movies, films that nowadays we wouldn't even consider as B movies because there's like kind of like critical thinking or something like that about cinema, about works of cinema back then. It's not quite the same as it is now. I don't know.
Again, sure, but it's not. Again, there isn't like the concept of the B movie is something that develops in popular culture to the point where it would make sense for like in a situation in like the 50s or the 60s for a movie director in that situation at that point in time, if they set the film during that period, it would make sense for them to say monsters belong in B movies. And I think because in the 96 script, they weren't supposed to take place in the 30s, they were supposed to take place later on, that would make sense. But in the case of how the film is here, in the 30s, it doesn't make sense. Even if we were to say, oh, he's referring to things like Dracula or the Wolfman or Frankenstein, those weren't really like B movies either. So
If it was like monsters belong in horror movies or something like that, that would have been a bit better.
But the thing was, like, he was pitching it as like an exotic lost world type scenario. He never specifically says dinosaurs to the producers, but he's trying to he's kind of like pitching it as kind of a more spooky type of film, and that's why even a line like that doesn't work.
Okay.
And then the other thing too is that with Anne, you have the setup of her skills, which is really only there to contextualize why she's able to do the things to charm Kong with the connection scene. The problem is that when they go out of business, that's how you get Anne to the point where she is in the 33 film, where she's out of work and then she's stealing the apple. The problem is that you then have the setup of the like producer guy telling her to go to the adult studio to make money there, and she turns it away because she's obviously like, it tries to paint her that she's above that, she's not going to do adult work like that, and she has her own agency. The problem with that is that when we get back to New York, Denham tries to give Anne all kinds of money that she turns down. So she turns down a lot of money and is immediately able to get into some random production that we know nothing about. What that tells me is that had Anne not said anything to Carl, and had she not been a Jack Driscoll fangirl, she probably would have gotten on parts somewhere else and probably would have been well off without ever having gone to Skull Island. But the thing is that the crux of the film, getting to Skull Island, is dependent upon Anne being enamored with Jack Driscoll and Carl telling her that Jack Driscoll was a part of it. Which in this case, it's not even like Carl lied to her in this case. Carl was under the impression, and Jack did provide parts of the script. So for all Carl knew, Jack was writing the script for the movie. So the only time a version of Carl who is far more manipulative is able to manipulate Anne is not even by him absolutely lying to her about the one thing that gets her on board. Which is extremely funny to me.
I'm genuinely expecting Unnatural History Channel to just pop in and start.
I bet what's it called? He's got, how many subs does he have? Do I even still have his tab open? No, I don't. He's got like far more subs than me. I mean, he is more than welcome to come on and discuss things with me. But like,
that was my brother.
You're good, don't worry. He'd be more than welcome to discuss the film with me. But based on like what he's talking about when it comes to Skull Island, it's mostly the fact that you like the speculative evolution part of it. It's very little of his video about Kong has anything to do with the writing of the actual King Kong movie. Which, again, I'm not even a big, super huge fan of the spec evo of the 05 Skull Island. And I've already listed one that most of it's not in the film, so it doesn't really affect the writing or the film itself. And again, like a lot of the designs and stuff, to me, visually look like they belong in like a grimdark setting. They don't really feel like they fit this, like the 30s era. I'm just looking through these.
Yeah.
Are Anne and Kong going to kiss? I originally thought watching the dang thing. I mean, they really play it up in the Dino film, so I wouldn't be surprised if they had done it in this one. But again, I think that because they try to make Kong more sympathetic in later films, you lose something that makes Kong awesome as a monster in like writing wise. I just realized CGF is online, so I'm gonna ask him if he wants to come on because I know he's like put me in. So
what does he think?
I'm just
That's
messing
fine.
with my Higher Toys Godzilla 2021.
You're good, don't worry.
This is a really
Wonder
good
what he thinks of it.
Like for example, I do like the Skull Island game, like the official game of the movie. Fun game.
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
not, and like, if anything, because you're spending more time with the characters, it kind of does give them more characterization and therefore better writing than the actual film itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's like even with as long as the Peter Jackson film is, it's like 3-hour movie versus however. I mean, I don't know if the game is like even that much longer than the
The
film
game
in
is
terms of.
not like the game is far. If you're a
I'm
somewhat
gonna-
competent
I'm
like
gonna head
FPS
out. I'm gonna
player,
head to dinner. I'll be back.
heading out. Okay, peace.
Right.
If you're generally a good FPS player, the King Kong, what's it called? The game is going to take you that long. It's only going to take you probably like a couple of hours.
Yeah, I mean, I've never speed run the game, but I pretty much would imagine that if I were to speed run it, it probably would only be. It would probably have to be a little bit longer than the movie.
Let's see. I'm just gonna look it up just because I'm curious. How long is King Kong 05 video game?
Yep.
Around 17 hours,
That's
which is interesting.
That doesn't seem right.
Accepted answer. That's to see how long does it take to beat this game. Accepted answer around 17 hours, according to 102 game FAQ users who told us how long it took them to beat it. So that's like purely just what the what's it called? That's what they're saying. Some people were saying the main story is gonna take you about 6 hours.
Yeah.
Completionist 12 and a half.
Yeah.
Speed runs. Let's see.
Yeah.
Where did I just any percent? So for a speedrunner, any percent is about 2 hours. 100% about an hour 30.
Okay. I mean,
that like the one thing that just makes me wonder in those statistics, and this is going off of howlongtobeat.com. Like I would love to see like I don't know the speedrun strats for the game, but like generally having like gone through the game recently, I was able to go through like 6 different chapters in a really short amount of time. And that's like also being out of practice, not having played a whole lot of FPS games for like a while. So like my reflexes aren't all they used to be when I was like playing Halo and other FPSs constantly. And like I probably think like if I was paying more attention or playing it harder, I probably would beat the game quicker.
Yeah, it's one of those games. Yeah, the Kong game is pretty much one of those. It's kind of one of those games where I pretty much wish it pretty much wouldn't end because you're pretty much really immersed in there pretty much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Man, I mean, like even the game does have like a lot of chapters. It's just they don't feel long if you're like if you're going through them at a pretty good pace. And here's another thing. The one thing I love is the fact that in the game, they don't even include Bruce as a character. He is absent from the game, which just shows how superfluous he is as a character.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and Hayes is still there, pretty much.
Well, Hayes is there, and I feel like the mechanic of the swapping the weapons is important because like Hayes is the only character besides Jack who sticks around for long portions of the game that actually holds guns, because Carl never uses guns and never uses guns. The only weapons that they will use are the spears. Yeah. So I think the only just because you don't have a second weapon like Call of Duty or Halo, having Hayes around meant that you could have the mechanic of swapping between weapons, because if you picked up a full magazine for a pistol, you could swap it with Hayes' shotgun or Hayes' sniper, whatever other gun he had, and then you'd have the option between those other weapons.
Yeah. I'd say probably I would say like the fact like probably the whole relationship between Hayes and Jimmy, like it's pretty much not like it's pretty much somewhat apparent in the game, but considering that we skip past like the time that's like that we spend on the boat, to get to the Skull Island bit, which is where the game begins, we pretty much don't. We don't really have like the scenes where like Hayes and Jimmy are like.
Well, yeah, like because it really only comes down to just the only characters that have characterization really are Jack, Carl, and kind of Hayes. Hayes is like a secondary character, while Jimmy becomes more of a secondary character because he fills Hayes' role when Hayes dies, and then Preston and Lumpy are like tertiary characters because you don't see Preston up close, and Lumpy gets killed by a V-Rex. And then there's other sailors who appear that like don't really have any lines, and they all die as well.
Yeah, I think in the game, like, did they pretty much imply that Preston died, or what even happened to? Like, I don't think they said
like,
anything.
I know
about
he
what happened
falls in the V-Rex fight, but like, I only like. Well, I can look that up again. Preston Kong 05. In the video game,
Yeah,
he
I mean, the last.
an elevator shatter crossing a bridge, and his crew is attacked by the V-Rex Trimids and Preston cheating alone as the other sailors fell. It is unknown what happened to him after his last encounter with the V-Rex. When Jack, Colin, and Hayes rescue Jimmy from the natives and disasters, he claims that they're all dead, including Preston. So yeah, Preston died.
Oh.
So like that also takes away from Carl's arc, because again, we don't have the end of Carl's character in the game. But like another thing too is that in the movie, Baxter goes back for reinforcements, which is how Englehorn gets there. But we also see when the log falls down into the pit, Preston doesn't fall all the way, and he grabs onto a vine. He could have gotten his way back up, and probably could have gotten back and gotten some help before Englehorn had set sail. Although you could also argue that because he had crossed the swamp, that maybe he would have been able to get past the swamp again. But then the question becomes, how does Englehorn get across the swamp? Did he take an alternate route or something? Or like those are all questions that you then have to come to. Is like, how does Englehorn get so far when you had to deal with the brontosaurs, the chasm, the ravine, the raptors, the pteranodon, the swamp, like crossing it? Like, there's a whole bunch of questions that like don't have satisfying answers to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And,
are you going to break down on 76 Remain response to the Big Jack Films video on it? I'd have to watch the 76 film again because I have not watched that in a long time. It was cool seeing Big Jack at G-Fest. But yeah, I think I know he does like that version. I would honestly have to look at the film again, and then see his video. Although I do know in the aftermath of this, I'm thinking about doing a few live streams going over people's praises of the film and doing those as responses, because I think King Kong 19100 talked about the 05 version being the best version of Skull Island. So I would be interested in going over that video again, because I haven't looked at that video in a little while. But yeah.
Funny. I've been planning on trying to make a Congo 5 video, and it was gonna be one where there'd be a lot of praise in it.
That's funny.
I'm still gonna make it, but
I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are, or like what you think the positives are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going through it right now. There's his All Kaiju Opinions video, which is kind of old. Oh yeah, the Jack Driscoll we never got to see in Kong 2005, so that's probably one I'd go over. He has the different interpretations of the King Kong 2005 story, so that's at least 2. Where's his video on Kong 05's island? Where is that gone? That's MonsterVerse. MonsterVerse and Realism, no. That's Kong for the MonsterVerse. Fixing Kong Skull Island. I might be misremembering it. He may not have actually done a video on the O5 Island being the best island. I think he just included it in a video talking about Kong in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably just me misremembering it.
And the thing is, though, me doing a Kong 05 video won't really happen for quite a while, really, because I pretty much have there's a lot of other projects that I want to do first.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I'm thinking, I may feel like doing I might do a live stream Monday. Because there's still another video I want to do before I do more Kong 05 stuff. So I'll probably do that video. I'll probably do that stream on Monday or Tuesday, maybe Monday or Tuesday. And then I will probably start doing some Kong 05 videos and trying to challenge everyone on that.
Nice. I'm pretty much if anything's gonna happen really in the Kong 05 on my end, that's gonna happen before a video, a full-on video on it. It would pretty much be me hosting a stream where I go into like a video that's critical of Kong 05. But unfortunately, it's like a 3-part thing that's kind of like archived and put together. I think I mentioned this to you before. The Confused Matthew review on King Kong 05. Yeah, for what I recall, not a good video. I pretty much have really the only sort of substantial criticism for that movie that I recall that was actually pretty valid was kind of the whole matter of how they were able to get Kong into the boat, which you could levy against the original as well.
Yeah, well, the thing for Jackson also says that the Venture is big enough to house Kong, and they would have just chloroformed him all the way back to the ship. So Jackson felt like he didn't really need to explain that, so there's that. And,
okay.
Oh, Minecraft World's back. Welcome back, Minecraft World.
Hi, I just had to grab dinner. So.
No, you're good. Don't worry.
Yeah, the family stuff has been put to the wayside, so.
No, that's cool. Any other things that you may want to talk about before probably close it out? I sent out the invite everywhere. I'm like, no one came.
Nobody bothered to defend Kong 05. I think.
I mean, hey, guess it just means how right I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Maybe.
I think it's because Kong 05 isn't really on. Well, okay, it is highly liked, but
it's really liked. That's why I'm surprised that no one came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people were I'm surprised that that some people are saying that I don't like it, but it's probably just people viewing it, which is fine. And I mean, if I see people giving responses in the comments, I'll be like, "Hey, come on, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it."
Yeah.
Well, maybe it just gets the ball rolling.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. We should definitely. Yeah, we should definitely try to do some kind of an addendum sort of debate, when it goes into more people's radar. Because I think it's because Godzilla is kind of more on people's radar. That's why the Condom debate was kind of
as well as it's MonsterVerse too, so people are just going to be more.
Yeah, if it was something like say GBK or hell Gojira 54, then I'd imagine a lot of people would be. Oh wait, what? Yeah. I'm looking up for that eventual one because Joseph and Braden were talking a while ago.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I should probably just plan that. I should probably just text and be like, "Yo, what days do you want to do that debate? I'll do a 2v1 for that."
Well, what's the debate?
Minus one isn't that good.
Because Joseph, one of the new people, apparently doesn't like the movie for its bad message. I genuinely don't understand why the message is wrong.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm curious to see what his reasoning is, because I was going to debate the topic over text because I'm like, I think it'd be interesting to voice it. Because I feel like one, it's interesting, it's good content, and I think the conversation can be insightful to see how people can get certain messages from certain things. So,
yeah. I'm also a little bit confused with this whole reason with the Polygon trilogy, specifically the Planet Eater being good, because no.
And
No.
like I mentioned, like I could probably, if I rewatch those films, which I might do, sooner or later, I might go back and watch them again, and then I might be like, wow, they're better than Kong 05.
So here's the
Is
thing.
Kong 05 your least favorite King Kong movie, or
No, like at the moment, I'll say this. In my mind, out of the three Kongs being 76, 33, and 05, it goes 33, 05, 76. I would be very surprised if I watched the 76 version again, and then I'm like, wow, I like 76 more than 05. That would really surprise me, in all honesty.
See, I've never cared for the 76 version. Which is
I've only seen that one once.
I've seen it twice.
I've only seen it once, and I caught it on a TV airing.
Yeah, I've seen it twice as well. Never. I mean, I mean, there's some. I think if I were to watch it again, I think there might be some things I appreciate about it, but in certain aspects, but it would mainly have to do with the technical side of things, with the practical and suitmation stuff.
Yeah,
but
like I'd probably say, like generally, if I was like to rank all like the Kong movies, excluding like the animated stuff and like the Kong Rise of the or like Kong King of the Apes, that movie on Netflix too, I'd probably say out of like the movies, including King Kong versus Godzilla 62 is my favorite, followed by King Kong 33, then King Kong Escapes, and then probably Kong 05, GVK, GXK all sort of hit that middle area to the point where like I don't like really any of them more than the others. So they all can sit in the middle there, and then 76 at the bottom. Then Skull. I completely forgot. Sorry, I'm surprised because I think I like Skull Island more than 05. So
did you include King Kong Lives as well?
No, because I've only seen that film once. I don't have a copy, so like I feel like it'd be unfair for me to even like rank it somewhere. Even though I don't even remember liking it all that much when I did see it that one time. So I'd probably just put it with the 76 version. So
okay. I feel like we should do a discussion stream about King Kong versus Godzilla 62, partially because it gives me an excuse to rewatch that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Like, and the thing is, like, I think that when it comes to both films, to like both versions, I'd say the Japanese version I like more than the American version, even though I think the American version has a lot of good qualities that people seem to ignore.
Yeah. I think the reason they ignore it is just because it's more of a meta commentary or just sports-like commentary on what's happening, rather than what the original film was meant to be.
Right. I'm pretty much gonna ask the Animus what he thinks of Kong 05, so that I can pretty much tell him like, yo, can you believe? Yo, guess what? Zim thinks that Kong 05 is like on the level of GVK and GXK.
I think that like if I was to really sit down and think about the egregious errors in plot and writing, I'd probably maybe 05 is better than those films, but like,
It's echoing. See, Monster, you're echoing
again. Crap. All right, hold on a sec. Let me.
Yeah. I need to rewatch both the 33 and 05 films because.
Yeah.
Am I echoing still?
No, you're not. You're good. But if I was like, I guess if I was to end off this stream, my main points and my main problems with Kong 05 is that it's too long. It does too little with its writing for its characters, with a lot of the tying up of their plot threads for their characters not even being in the regular film itself and being in the extended editions. Unlike with Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, where at least all the character writing was tied up in those theatrical versions and did not need the extended editions. And the extended editions improve the Lord of the Rings. They do not for King Kong. There are far too many changes to the original story because they wanted to do something different or they felt a certain way about the original film. And because of that perception gets in the way of their writing and just makes everything overall much worse. I think that Skull Island's world building is all right, but because most of it's not on film, it's not relevant to the writing or the quality of the film. and most of the threats of Skull Island, especially, for example, the V-Rex being the biggest example, are really only there for visual spectacle, and when looked at more closely, do not present the same danger and menace as the 33 version is. And I think some of the more problematic elements of the 05 version are not as bad with their proper context, even though it is still bad in terms of writing wise. The reasons that people give for them are often misguided or lack proper information, and as a result are poor critiques of the film, even though they would still say that the film is bad because of that. But I do not agree with those points. So yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I still like. I would say. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you go. You go.
Okay. So yeah, Congo 5. You know, it's a movie that still I would say it holds pretty closely. Yeah, for me, pretty much. I mean, I guess I wasn't. I guess maybe I missed out on that part of the debate, but I was kind of but I pretty much assuming it was elaborated on more earlier on. But yeah, I pretty much think that the Kong and Anne sort of stuff is pretty much handled really well. It pretty much works really well. As far as like how Skull Island is realized, and how and the spectacle of it in it is really I would say very well done. Even upon like rewatching the film recently, it's like like there's some stuff here and there that is a bit like that's a bit CG pretty much, but no, not bad CG, but it is kind of noticeable. But there's like some shots that even 20 years later or almost 20 years later, I would say it just looks gorgeous.
I wish Brandon was here because then we could talk about the VFX, but
yeah,
I don't know how he feels about King Kong 05's VFX.
Yeah.
I would not mind joining the -1 debate, as pro -1. I'd say
I have some things to say about the movie, but it really just depends on the debate.
Yeah,
not negative things to say about the movie. -1 is my 4th favorite film ever made. So,
I also wouldn't mind. Yeah, I mean, I think another one we were suggesting is like a Shin Godzilla debate.
no, I think we're
watch
gonna
Shin again.
What?
I'd have to watch Shin again.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're technically going to get that with Shin versus 98.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know if I would say Shin is worse than 98. I'm still very iffy on that. I guess I wait and see Animus's video just to to see if it's like maybe there's something I'm missing. And I probably have to watch it again. The movie.
Yeah, I probably have to watch both of them. Personally, I like 98 as a film more, but I don't know quality-wise.
Right. But yeah, Kong 05, I kind of think it's more. It pretty much like definitely is faithful in spirit to the original while still being able to kind of stand on its as like as like Jackson's like own sort of take on the thing, from the visual look of the thing to kind of how the sort of Beauty and Beast sort of story between Anne and Kong is done, and as well as like the fact that there's like a little more characterization to the people who would typically be like the red shirts of the whole thing, like pretty much like Lumpy or Jimmy or Hayes, that would just they're kind of like have a little more going on than what we would see in the original, which I pretty much do appreciate. And yeah, I would say it's pretty well acted, very well acted. And but yeah.
And for me, oh no, you go.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much kind of understand some of the critiques, pretty much. I would say there is kind of like. There is like a scene like at the beginning of the movie where with the old guy pretty much where where he's like I'm going back to Chicago, and next thing you know, like when Anne and the guy are basically hugging, he's like, ever since you were small, people have been letting you down. It's like wait a minute. It's like, is that for her or is that for us the audience, or is it both? I mean, it's a little. There's some clunk. There's a little bit. There's some clunk here and there. I will admit, but I can't really say that the short. I can't really agree that the shortcomings are enough to really to kind of like tear the movie down significantly. But yeah.
For me, Kong 05, last year I would have said it's my favorite King Kong movie. In recent years, it has gone down a little bit. I still love the film for what it does, as well as the world that it presents, even if most of it isn't even on screen. My favorite King Kong movie, Zim, you're probably going to kill me for this. I would say is GXK pure. There it is. No, purely because of the experience. Purely because of what the film gave for me in comparison to what Kong 05 did for me.
Yeah.
Being the film to really get me back into enjoying theaters again, as well as just giving me an appreciation for King Kong as a character. But I would say, and Kong 05 I would put in third place now behind King Kong vs. Godzilla, which I've grown a bit more of an appreciation for, even if I haven't seen it in a while. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, I respect the sentiment pretty much, but yeah, I mean, if you ask me, like GXK, I guess.
I'm not calling GXK a good movie, but but the experience that it gave for me was enough to put it as my favorite.
Yeah, because I've seen, I pretty much saw Kong 05 when it was out in theaters. I was pretty much 11, let's just say, just to give you guys a bit of an idea, just to show how old I am, all you Gen Zers, millennials, you weren't there in 2005 when Revenge of the Sith came out. That movie was the tits when it came out. It was back when Star Wars used to be cool, and when King Kong came out, and when Batman Begins came out.
Yeah.
I was born in 2005, so
Jeez, you young child.
Yeah, you missed out.
Yeah, no, 05 was a good year.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think that will leave it off for us. Just a little shy under 3 hours. So
yeah,
I think because of that, I'd say that this is a good jumping off point. If anyone responds in the comments, expect me to say, "Hey, come on for another one." I'll gladly discuss this point further. But yeah, so expect me to give you some news when the next kaiju writing stream is. That's probably give some time away while I set up everyone into our groups and stuff like that. And expect a video because I'm working on that with another YouTuber to get that out and prepared while I do some art as well. So yeah, enjoy that. And this is Zimzilla. And as always, guys,
Semper Fi, motherfucker.
all right.